Hi, this is Joseph Arthur. Thanks for checking out Come to Where I'm From. Please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/come to where I'm from. We are an independent podcast, and any contributions you can make are greatly appreciated.
So excited you're here.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm starstruck.
No, stop it.
I'm telling you.
No way.
I told people, I was like, this is going to be the first podcast I'm actually starstruck.
Oh, no.
Well, it's just because you came into my life at that intense time of MPD discovery. You were like one of the, So
Wow.
You're Lisa Romano.
Yeah.
Breakthrough life coach.
Yes. Yep.
Podcast episode what?
122.
122.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
And I think it's Lisa A.
Yes.
Romano.
Lisa A. Romano.
Yeah.
Breakthrough life coach.
That's it.
Yeah,
Because I want you to break through.
Yeah. And help us learn that we are enough.
Amen, brother.
I am enough.
You are enough. You were born enough.
Yeah.
You'll always be enough.
Yeah.
You'll never not be enough.
What do you think of how did you start getting into doing a YouTube channel on this, and how did you have the confidence to do that?
I didn't really have the confidence to do it.
Right.
What I knew, I felt like I had to do it. So,
Like it was a calling?
well, I went through all of my stuff with my family and didn't know that I was codependent until my marriage really started to disintegrate.
Right.
I had grown up being called crazy, feeling very invalidated, feeling very not enough.
Right.
And when I married my ex-husband, I didn't realize that I married someone who was very similar to my mother's energy,
Right.
somebody who withheld love, somebody who knew what I needed and would deliberately withhold it and enjoyed me chasing after it and falling apart when I didn't get it. Gaslighting, that type of stuff, passive aggressiveness. And my body started to revolt through asthma and migraine headaches and rashes that the doctors couldn't figure out. I was being tested for cancer and autoimmune things, and there's nothing wrong with you, kid. It's like, how could there be nothing wrong with me?
Right.
I can't breathe, and I have these terrible migraine headaches, and my stomach's bothering me, and look at me, I'm covered in rashes. Like, nope, no logical medical reason for why you are the way that you are. And during a really bad asthma attack, I had a doctor who I really didn't even like that much, said, you better listen to your body because your body's listening to you.
Your body knows the score.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your body keeps the score.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was the first time. It was so weird. Like someone who, if I say it, they'll go, oh yeah, I know what that feels like. I needed an authority figure to say it's okay to tap into yourself. I didn't have the permission to look within because I'd been so invalidated.
Yeah.
And so I started like, my body's listening to me. What's really going on? And that's when I went home and I said to my ex-husband, I can't pretend anymore. Like, I'm so unhappy. And he said, well, you're crazy because
Right.
I am happy.
He gaslit you or?
Well, I think that he really was happy.
Right.
I think that he was really happy. I think he was happy in our codependent relationship, me taking care of him, me acquiescing, me trying to get his approval, him withholding it. I think he was in a very comfortable position, me financially dependent upon him. He was in a really cushy place. We had 3 kids. I was taking care of them. I was completely dependent upon him. I cooked, I cleaned, I took care of the kids. Like, I'm not unhappy. You're the one that's complaining, so you must be the one with all the problems.
Yeah, you're the crazy one.
And so that was the beginning of the end. And then after 4 or 5 therapists, I finally found one that said, it's going to take everything you've got to like deal with this issue from childhood, which is you are codependent, you're suffering from depression, but you also have unrecovered adult children of alcoholics or parents.
Right.
So you grew up in a dry home. And I was like, what does that mean? And that started my journey. And when it hit me like a lightning bolt, like I was subconscious. I was on autopilot. I had literally been programmed to not love myself.
Yeah.
I grew up in a dysfunctional home that looked perfect on the outside. That invalidated me. No wonder I felt crazy. It was the opposite of what a child should grow up in, and I didn't know it.
Right.
And so I didn't know that to point to that because my parents looked like Ken and Barbie,
Right.
you know, and the house was clean and we had 3 meals a day and we went to private school. It had to be me. I must be crazy because I feel so out of sorts.
But was there any kind of abuse in the home? Did you know you were in an abusive situation at home, or you didn't even know?
No.
You
know,
didn't even know?
No. Verbal abuse, you know, being minimized, withholding love, being told that you're crazy. That was par for the course. When you think that you're the problem, you don't
Right.
think it's abuse. You think you're the reason this is happening.
Yeah, that's true. But as you get older, I think you kind of catch on that your folks might be a bit off, at least.
I think it took me a long time.
Right.
I think that you're ahead of the curve if you know they're not as smart as I thought they were, or something's up with them. I think that you're ahead of the curve if you're actually able to see that.
Yeah.
But in my situation,
That's
I thought
true.
it was me.
Okay, you totally thought it was you.
Oh, it was all me.
I mean, because to me, it was like a mix. Definitely self-hatred and
Yep.
toxic shame and living below the veil of consciousness, like you often say.
And your parents doing that too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but there was also some other things going on that were a bit more like, wait, that's wrong. That's clearly wrong.
Right.
Like,
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that, I guess, was fortunate.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
like when you grow up in a home where it messes with your head when there's nothing to point at. I couldn't point at alcohol. I couldn't point at drugs. I couldn't point at abuse like with my parents, although it was a very controlling relationship.
Yeah.
You know, my mother wouldn't complain about following my father around and his rage, and she just, whatever he wanted, whatever he said, and we followed suit. So we thought that was the norm.
Did you end up going no contact with them for a time?
Yeah.
How long?
About a year where
Okay.
it was just,
Zero contact.
I didn't want them to call me.
Right.
My skin was being ripped off.
Yeah.
And no.
The discovery of the MPD epidemic is so crazy when you like first wake up to how that's been operating in
Yep.
your life. It's just like you can't stop watching YouTube videos. Like I must have watched 5 million of your YouTube videos and lots of other people too. I mean, yours is some of the best to me. But you know, there's lots of great resources. But when you first make that discovery, it's unlike anything else.
It's the awakening. It's like, that's what's wrong.
How did that happen for you? Because you were sort of pre all the YouTubers and all that. So
Yeah.
I mean, I Googled stuff and started discovering things, and one thing led to another. But how did you get to that awareness?
Well, the therapist said to me, I want you to go home and I want you to buy this book, Codependent No More. And I was like, okay. And it terrified me because I read the first couple of pages and I slammed the book shut and I said, I'm never going to be able to unsee or unlearn what I learn. And I'm forever going to be changed by the information in this book.
Right.
And that's what happened. It was like, oh my God, I'm codependent. My mother was codependent. And here I was programming my children to be codependent. And I took a very analytical approach. And I just started to doing side-by-side analysis. Like if children grew up in a happy, healthy home, what would they experience? They'd feel seen. They'd feel validated, right? They'd feel nurtured. They'd feel forgiven. They'd feel safe. I didn't feel any of those things.
Right.
I never felt safe. I felt so invisible that when I was about 7 years old, I pretended to faint in the street during a snowstorm. And a car stopped and I was like, well, I guess I'm real. Somebody saw me because I'm walking around my house like, you can't see me? Like,
Right.
There's-
the invisible child.
well, yeah. And not only that, invisible, but also very much, my mother had a lot of unresolved stuff. And me being her oldest and also a female, I think she projected her unresolved stuff onto me. So feeling resented, feeling in the way,
Yeah.
the only thing that felt good was to get out of her way, which is so opposite of what a child's developing brain needs.
Yeah.
in order to feel safe and in order to feel like you can be social, and trust that you are enough to make contact with other people and not shrivel and recoil. So I got the exact opposite of what I needed. So invisible, but also when you did see me, I was disgusting to you.
Right.
It's pretty rough.
That's rough. Yeah. Well, that's like what Ross Rosenberg says, self-love deficit disorder.
Yeah.
That's such a great way of defining what codependency is.
Yeah, it's a loss of selfhood, and you can't develop a self unless you have positive mirroring.
Yeah.
So I would always say, like, how could you have self-esteem as a child if you don't have a self?
Yeah.
Or if the self that you have, you've decided is unworthy.
Right.
Because when you look into the eyes of your mother and father, what's reflected back? You're unworthy. You're a pain in the ass, kid. Get lost.
Yeah. It's so wild with this too, though, because when you do go through the long, grueling process of recovering from codependency, which I don't think there's an end point to it. It's just a maintenance and a progression. But when you get far enough along, and the sort of MPD situations in your life also alter because you're approaching those situations from a different place of power.
Yes.
Like it's almost like it can't really get to you as much. But one of the questions I have, and one of the things that messed me up on the MPD recovery thing, was when I discovered Ho'oponopono. You know, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. The mantra about self-empowerment. And because in that mantra, the philosophy is everything in your field of consciousness is your responsibility, including everybody else's sort of problems and stuff like that. And you pray over that to resolve that. I guess the thing I think that I've always wanted people to ask about the MPD versus codependency thing is, because also there's the what you see is what you are, and people often go like, "Am I the narc or what?" But like when you're seeing all these weird subversive psychological games, it is like a house of mirrors in which like, wait, and because they're never gonna validate that you're perceiving things correctly, because one of the main tactics is to invalidate your perception. So you crazy making and mashed potato brains, I heard you say in one of your recent videos.
Yep.
You know, so what's your take on that? I guess it's like a complicated question, but like ultimately I feel like you have to get to a place of self-ownership and self-responsibility again. Like there's a lot of narrative on the MPD thing about like they're bad and we're good and they're evil, you know, and that doesn't really work long term.
Not in the spiritual world.
Right.
Not in the vibrational world.
Right.
Because there's only vibration, right?
So how do you deal with that?
So I think this is a really tough thing. I always tell my clients, the clients that say, yeah, but, and I go, are we going to have a moral conversation, which is an egoic 3D conversation, or are we going to have a spiritual conversation? Because they're not the same conversation. So if I want to be right and I need to make this other person wrong, then I'm justifying my anger for this person, right? So that's a 3D conversation, and that's fine. That's why most people go into therapy, because they're unable to make the narcissist validate that they're actually a narcissist. So this is you want to change someone, right? So if I go into therapy, that's what I did. I went to therapy wanting to like understand myself and hopefully change my ex-husband. Doesn't he see what he's doing to me? Right? And then, so that was my thing, wanting to change him. But on the other side of it, he wanted me to change too. So we were both stuck, right? So I think it's, when it comes to understanding narcissism, narcissists live in a true false reality. So they are protecting themselves from a lot of shame. And because they're not self-reflective, you know, they don't want to go there. They can't go there. They'd implode if they went there and said, I'm the problem, or I have to forgive you, or I'm looking for you to validate me and praise me, and I get to treat you any way I want to, and that's wrong, and I have to have empathy for you. They would implode. They can't do it, right? So I had to get to a point where in my family, I understood that my parents came with their own set of programming, right? My dad's father was a violent alcoholic. His mother committed suicide when he was like 3 or 4, right? back in the 40s. So it was really rough for my dad, right? He was the youngest of 4 children, you know, and he had to learn how to survive. And so he became very tough. So in his world, it's better to be eaten. It's better to eat than be eaten. You know, so he had to develop all of these defense mechanisms to protect the fear that he had inside of him. And he died that way. He just died in February.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, he died that way. He you know, he died exactly the way he lived, afraid, and unable to access his emotions. I had to get to a point where I understood that he was who he was, and it wasn't for me to change him. And if I was going to continue to evolve, I had to accept him and get to a point where I was able to even thank my experience with him for teaching me what I needed to learn, which is ultimately to let go and accept people for who they are, where they are. You really can only judge someone based on their level of self-awareness at the time,
Right.
you know, and someone's level of self-awareness is always going to be a mirror to their personal experiences.
Yeah.
So I had to get to a point where it was just like, I have to let go and accept these people in my life for who they are and walk away with, what has this taught me to do? Because I realized that having narcissistic people in my life, I had an attachment, right? So I wanted to take care of my ex-husband as a codependent so I could feel validated.
Mm-hmm.
So if I take care of you and I do a good job, you're going to pat me on the back? Oh, I have purpose.
Yeah.
You know, I'm running away from my lack of self. Whereas if I was really healthy, I would have never entered into that marriage in the first place. I would have known we're not equally yoked. No way. No, I would have known it.
Yeah.
You know? And so I've gotten to the point where if I can't, you can't talk out of, you can't, in life, you have to learn how to not talk out of both sides of your mouth.
What do you mean by that?
If you want peace, you have to be peaceful.
Right.
And as long as you fixate on what someone else is doing that you can't control, you're not going to be peaceful.
Yeah.
So I had to get to a point where I accepted that people were the way they were. And I developed tools like shutty, you know, and the 1, 2, 3 process. I developed tools that allowed me to let go and let people be who they were and to stop pulling them into my vibrational experience.
What's shutty?
So at work one day, I worked in this wellness center. I was a personal coach for a long time and fitness trainer for a long time. And I did I created meal plans for athletes. And it was a really rough time. I was separated at the time, and I was getting, no joke, anywhere from 10 to 30 text messages and or phone calls a day from my ex-husband, who was very, very angry that I was going through with the divorce. He never expected that to happen. And I was distraught with anxiety, distraught. Never knew when he was going to call, when he was going to be outside in the parking lot, what he was going to say, what he wasn't going to say, what he was going to say to the kids. It was always this what if.
Right.
And I was like, I was understanding anxiety, anticipatory anxiety, not living in the now, worried about a bridge that hadn't even appeared yet, making myself sick, trying to control outcomes that I could not really control. So I was learning a lot about living in the now and understanding that if I pay attention to it, I'm basically breathing it into my reality.
Right.
I'm giving it life.
Yeah.
CPR.
Yeah.
So one day the phone was going off in the locker and I just looked at the phone and I saw all these terrible text messages and I was understanding he was addicted to the matrix, or he was addicted to my reaction.
Yeah, he was trying to trigger you. Yeah.
He wanted my reaction.
Yeah.
And I was so angry, like, how could you treat me this way? I'm the mother of your kids. I'm only trying to make a living. You know, I walked away without alimony. I don't get any health insurance. Like, you should be so grateful. You should leave me alone, dude. You know, like,
Right.
Stop.
Yeah.
And it wasn't enough.
Right. Yeah.
So I was so angry. But again, here I was below the veil of consciousness, reacting to him, reacting to me.
Mm-hmm.
So we were stuck.
You were in the matrix.
I was in the matrix.
Of his madness.
And my own.
And your own. Yeah, of course.
On my own, because codependent, if I'm codependent on something that's happening outside of me.
Right.
So I was like, nope, Nope. And I just closed my phone. I had a flip phone at the time. And I was like, shutty.
Yeah. No, I use that technique a lot, or I have done in my
Good.
whole recovery of this. Just like when I know I'm in a triggering situation with somebody, just do not read whatever, it's brilliant that you can do that.
Yeah. It's like, and if you really, and also studying like quantum mechanics, the law of attraction, it just makes sense, right? Like if I'm focusing on it, it's going to grow. I'm giving energy to it, right? So if I start to pull my attention away from it, it will eventually cease to exist. But we have to recognize that we're ego, and we have a brain that is primitive and reactive. And so then the goal is to manage my own ego and manage my brain's reactivity, and to not jump into that soup, and to develop self-control, and to be conscious about what are you creating in the next moment. Because if you answer this phone call, you're stepping into the creation of the next phone call with him.
It's wild when you learn that your a mental and emotional space is highly valuable. And because when you grow up a codependent, you just give that away. You don't have boundaries. Everyone's triggering you left and right. And you're just like, you just think that that's the way the world is. And you're mad. When that's the great thing about learning about this whole other thing that sort of liberates you. And like what you said in one of your last videos about, you're supposed to be a 100-watt light bulb, not a 5-watt light bulb. And all those things turn you into a 5-watt light bulb or a 1-watt light bulb.
It's sort of like without a boundary, like, how do I explain? Like if you have a cup, right? You put water in it, you can fill the cup up. But if the cup starts to disintegrate, you can't gather up any water. So it's the same thing with electricity or energy. If you have no boundary and you're constantly reacting to what's happening around you, or you think you should be, or you don't think what should be happening is happening and you're reacting, your boundary is being lost. And that's why I developed the 1, 2, 3 process, which is focus on what you can control versus what you can't control.
Right.
But in the whole space of that, you have to honor your experience. So quickly, that is, accept how you feel. So if you're pissed off, accept it. If you're frustrated, accept it. If you're jealous or envious or rageful or sad or full of grief or disillusioned, just stop and just, wow, this is how I really, really feel. Because codependents dissociate, they deny, they block, or they do something I call layer. So I'm pissed off. Or I'm sad that I'm sad.
Right.
Or I'm angry that I'm sad. No, just be sad.
Right.
Just chill. Just, how do you feel? Tap into yourself. How do I feel, right? Why is that important? Because as a codependent, you've been invalidated. So you better start learning how to validate how you feel. That's step 1 to a boundary. And step 2 is feel it in your body. How do you know you're sad? How do you know you're angry? How do you know you're disillusioned? How is your body sending you the signal that, wow, this is really how I feel? So you have to come back into your body. And then the third thing is decide what you're going to do about how you feel. That's the big step, because we might get stuck in the feeling, but we don't know what action to take, right? Because what
usually
do they
it's
think?
running away from it, like watching a TV show or eating ice cream.
That's very common. Or it's reacting.
Yeah,
or it's reacting. So the third step is, what are you going to do about how you feel? But you have to run it through 3 parameters. What can I control? What can't I control? And ultimately, how do I want to feel? And that's why when I shut the phone that day, it was like, the goal was, well, how do you want to feel tomorrow? Peaceful. So what do you have to do today? Shut the phone. Stop engaging. But he's going to keep calling me. He's going to keep, that's okay. Detach. Leave him in the matrix. Leave him in the matrix like a little Tasmanian devil. Just stop. Just let him go.
That's a good visualization.
It's so
right?
helpful.
A little Tasmanian devil.
Knock yourself out.
Because it makes him a cartoon, which ultimately, that's what it is. It's a cartoon trying to get to your soul.
Yeah, to me, it's like
drawn by the devil.
Yeah, it's just, I think that we all come here to awaken. And sometimes, when we're dealing with someone who is so asleep, they force you to awaken.
Right. That's so funny. That's a really good way to put that. That's a great way to put that.
It's sort of like knocking on the door and finally no one comes. Well, thank God you didn't open the door
Yeah.
because I was supposed to walk away.
You know what's wild though is this whole MPD explosion of information. That means that lots of narcs are also waking up to their narcissistic behavior. And so some of them that are evil, I guess, more, or, you know, more sort of consciously
They
trying.
get the cheat code.
Yeah, well, yeah, like the psychopathic variety gets the cheat code and gets to upgrade their techniques.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
the techniques need to keep getting upgraded because these people are smart
Their OS has been
and creative as all get out. So
Yeah.
not to be underestimated. But then I think there's others that are genuinely disturbed that they have those traits and want to heal. And I know the rhetoric on the whole thing is you can't heal and that's it. But is that true? I mean, do some people can, and I guess it's a two-part question too, because it's also like everyone's kind of got shades of all these behaviors.
That's right,
So
the
it's
spectrum.
really hard to just like I was kind of trying to say it before, but just put them in separate categories, and we're all kind of the stew of dysfunction,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So, but do you think people can recover from the narc thing, and how do you see this community evolving through time?
I think that there are people who, like a malignant narcissist, doesn't really care if they're narcissistic.
Right.
You know, they have no empathy. They actually enjoy inflicting pain.
Right.
You know, and they may actually have brain issues. Like there might be something wrong with the empathy center in the
Deaf
brain.
soul issues.
Soul, and you know, it could also be a brain issue. Like, you know, they don't have
The
empathy neurons.
amygdala, or the, what do you call it?
They don't have empathy neurons or
Right.
mirror neurons that are functioning or firing, which is really scary. So they won't respond to someone in pain the way you might.
Right.
Right. So you see someone in pain, you immediately relate. You have a somatic experience, like, wow, you know, that dog just got hit by a car. Like, wow, look at, you have a somatic. There are people that don't have that. Like, it's missing, you know, and the pleasure center of the brain may actually get activated when they see suffering.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
wild.
that's scary.
They get dopamine from that.
That's so scary.
That's a design flaw.
Oh, it certainly is.
If I could make
Some
a criticism,
water.
God,
Yeah.
that would be a design flaw, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, like what happened to the
What
water?
happened there, bud?
Yeah, that's a problem. But I think, like, you know, like, and there are people who are more narcissistic because their parents taught them entitlement.
Right.
Sure, you're better. Sure, cut the line. Sure, do this. You don't have to care about that, you know? And then there are people who become narcissistic because of the severe trauma in their life. And I know that research suggests that most people with NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, don't get better because lots of times they don't think there's anything wrong with them.
Right.
But I think someone who has high narcissistic traits, who recognizes, you know, I do have this problem, and I think if they really, 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 really want to change, I think anything's possible.
Yeah.
It's not easy because to do this work, you really have to embrace the shame that created this armor that caused you to have a lack of empathy for others and just put yourself first and develop this false self. You have to crack all those layers to get to the part of you that really needs to be healed. So that's quite the journey.
Yeah. Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have a brother and a sister.
Brother and a sister, and what do they think of what you're like? And when you first started being like going on YouTube and revealing all this and stuff, like, weren't you like scared of the reaction from the family? And
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I mean, that I know that
Terrified.
I know that was terrifying.
My knees were shaking.
So
you know.
how did you get over that? And then what was the response from your family? Did they feel betrayed or like?
Well, it first started with me recognizing, you know, that I needed to get a divorce, and my family was very upset with that. And I sort of feel like it was classic. You know, sometimes you come from a dysfunctional family and you just feel like if I surpass my parents, I'm betraying them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I surpass them and if I ask for more than what they settled for, I'm out. So I feel like there was always this unconscious need for me to tamper myself down because the need for my parents was so strong, and I'd always felt like an outsider anyway, and I didn't want to risk that. And I knew saying, I'm getting a divorce, even though you love him, I'm getting a divorce. I knew that was going to tick them off.
Right.
And I did it anyway.
Because they loved him.
Oh, yeah. Well, they loved him, and it also reinforced she's crazy.
Right. Oh, he was playing into the old school narrative on Lisa.
Oh, yeah, they all did. And I knew it. So it was like to tell everybody, goes, you jump in the lake, I'm getting divorced anyway, and you can think what you want and think I'm a bitch and think I'm terrible and think I'm selfish. Go right ahead, think what you want. I'm done. I've got 3 babies that I've programmed incorrectly, and this is my cross to bear, and I'm going to do what I have to do without all of you. I'm just going to do it. And then I started writing a book about it because it seemed to me to make so much sense. It's not you, it's your programming. And like, if you don't know your family's dysfunctional and you don't know that you've been programmed for dysfunction, you are going to go out into the world not knowing that you're living below the veil of consciousness, seeking validation, thinking it's you, being so frustrated, looking to be validated. You're never going to live a fulfilled life. You're never going to feel like you're enough. Relationships are always going to feel empty. You're just never going to feel enough. So I thought it was a strong enough message to risk everything and just start writing about it. And then I wrote about it, and I was like, when am I going to publish it? I thought, well, maybe when my parents die, because I'm outing my family.
Yeah.
And then my brother-in-law committed suicide in his backyard.
I'm so sorry.
Yep. He committed suicide. My sister and he were extremely, we were all codependent. My whole family, my brother and my sister and I, nobody escaped.
Right.
And when I got the news that he had taken his life, it was like a light, literally a flash in my head. And it was like, you have to publish that book.
You have to help people.
You have to publish that book.
Right.
And then
it's like a purpose-driven, that's the thing that can usurp all that toxic holding yourself back, is like the voice of God, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it, just giving you purpose like that.
And it was like, I realized like they abandoned you anyway.
Right.
So now to be out in the open, and I always felt I was so ashamed that I never felt like I got their love. But now I was doing something, I was drawing a line in the sand. I'm going to talk about my experiences.
Yeah.
And now you can actually say, see, she's crazy. And I was handing it to them, writing this book. But I was just like, it's okay. And I thought, if one person walks away from thinking, oh, my family, I come from an alcoholic family. Oh, my mother was codependent, so I learned and my dad has high narcissistic traits. Oh, that's why I am the way I am. If one person doesn't have to suffer what he suffered, my brother-in-law, then it will be worth it. But yeah, my brother called my ex-husband and said, we're done with her.
Right.
And my daughter called me and she's like, Daddy said that, your brother said that they want nothing to do with you. You sold them out for money. I was like, money? I make like 10 cents a book. Money.
Sold them out for money.
I self-published this book, you knuckleheads. What do you think I'm making?
That's funny.
But they just, what do you think I'm making? Okay. And I just felt it was something within me. Just keep going.
Yeah. You followed that voice. Good on you.
Yeah, it was scary though. And then
I know.
It was so scary. And then my ex-husband told my brother that I said things that I never said about my dad.
Imagine that.
Oh, God. Do you know that your sister said that your father touched her inappropriately? I never said that.
Yeah.
But it brought me to my knees because, again, all of these codependency issues with my family, thinking if my knucklehead brother goes back and tells my father that, my father is going to believe that that's going to hurt him.
Right.
And it was a lie. It was just the triangulation. It was just the smear campaign.
Good old smear campaign.
Trying to get anybody in the world to twist the narrative to make it seem like he was the victim. And I really was the crazy one.
Yeah.
And then it was just, I cried so hard that day. I don't know if I had a dream or if it was, I don't know what it was, but I was on the kitchen floor and I was, I guess, half sleeping, whatever. And I just had this vision of God that I would consider was God. And he was shaking his head like, you didn't say it. And I know you didn't say it. What are you going to do? You're going to knock on every door and say, by the way, who cares? Let them think whatever they want to think. And I was like a rag doll on my kitchen floor. I was like, that's so true. Like, can't control what
Can't
comes.
control what people think.
No.
And as an aside on the smear campaign thing, like there's so much awareness of all these things now.
Yeah.
That now I think when somebody tries to launch a smear campaign, it doesn't look like it's not as easy because
Yes.
so many people are aware. Like if somebody's all of a sudden talking bad about somebody, it's like, oh, why are you doing that? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
people have all we've all gotten smarter and
Yes.
wiser to this. Not everybody.
Right.
And smear campaigns can still work. It's usually like, I'm concerned. It has to
Yes.
come with, I'm really concerned about so and so. Like it has to be veiled a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
but so did you get to a place of peace with your family? Because it feels like in later videos you were talking about like you kind of were like, you talk about them lovingly as well. Like that's the thing with like there. It's not this like, it's not black and white. I feel like. Did you come to a place of any peace with them or?
Oh yeah, because well, what happened was, when you, at least in my case, what happened was I got to a point where I realized that there was so much subtle abuse or innocuous abuse, and my mother, for instance, had gotten away with it my whole life, and there was one day in particular where she was verbally abusive to me in front of my kids. And I was in therapy at the time, and my therapist said, the next time someone tries to hurt you, don't act like they didn't. Ask yourself how you feel. And I had therapy that day, and she said whatever she said, and I just said, how do I feel? And the tears just came. And of course, what are you crying about? You make a big deal out of nothing. You're just looking for attention. There she goes again, big drama queen. I'm like, and once you open up that, how do you feel? You can't shut it down anymore.
Right.
Because it was always like, pretend
my
she didn't
gun?
say it. Yeah. But before you get to that point, you're like, I shouldn't feel this way. She's going to call me a drama queen. She's going to say I'm overreacting. So shut it down. But once you flip that lid or that switch, it's like, well, how do you feel? I just couldn't contain it. So I went in the back room. I called my kids. I said, come on, put your jackets on. We're leaving. And she came in, where you going? And I said, I'm leaving. I'm out of here. And I said, I'm not 12 anymore, and you can't talk to me like this anymore.
Right.
And if a woman ever needed her mother, it was now, because I was going through my divorce.
Right.
I said, now move. Get out of my way and move. And my father's shaking his head, oh, this house is so crazy. And my brother's saying, get out. You always cause a problem. And I'm like flipping
my
everybody
God.
off.
So
like,
you're the scapegoat.
yeah,
Kinda.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm giving
And he's
everybody the
golden-
finger, like,
yeah.
I'm
But-
done.
But that's the other thing, because that's in a way a narc victory. Like when
Yes.
they cause
Yes.
when they cause us to react.
Yes.
Finally we snap. Like I've heard you even talk about in videos before, and we snap, and then because eventually you just keep prodding somebody.
Yes.
They're going to have therapy or no therapy.
Yes.
They'll have a breaking point.
I think what happened to me was I was reacting before I knew what was really happening. And then when I started to understand the madness of it, like you're not supposed to want to set me on fire. You're my mom.
Right.
I was like, wow, that's messed up. And like my father acting like it wasn't going to happen, like it wasn't happening. And
Enabling kind of.
for sure. And my brother, just wanting to be my mother's golden child, and the jealousy between he and I. And I was just like, this is such classic dysfunctional alcoholic stuff,
Yeah.
Like I began to understand the house was crazy. So when I had that breakdown, it was so different. It was like, I'm calling you all out on
I
it.
see. So this didn't feel like the kind of reaction that you
No.
feel guilty about later, and no, you feel this was an empowered kind of vibe.
I'm done.
Right.
I'm done.
I
I'm not
feel you on
chasing.
that.
I'm not chasing your approval.
Yeah.
Go right ahead and think I'm crazy. Disown me. Call grandma. Call grandpa. Call whoever you got to call. Call the neighbors. Start writing letters. Start sending your emails.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Interesting that it was rooted in this therapeutic
Yes.
process and your feelings.
How do you feel?
That's interesting. Because a lot of times if you do react, even if you're in the right, you will feel guilty. You will
Yep.
feel like, they got me, or
Yep.
I have, like be tempted to apologize for your reaction for getting treated like crap.
I think when you're just reacting, and you're not aware of why you're reacting, you can be disempowered by that.
Right.
But when you're reacting and you're ready to set the boundary, and you're willing to change the entire paradigm, like these people were not coming into my life again unless they came in with some level of respect. There's just, you're not allowed in.
And that's it. And so they did come in with respect, right?
It took a while, you know.
Yeah.
We sold our house, our marital home. I had to buy another house. And I was working with a contractor who unfortunately said he was going to do things that he didn't do. I was a single mom. I had run out of money. I'd paid him everything, you know, that I had.
That's typical.
I didn't want anything more than what he promised me.
Right.
And my dad happened to be there, and and my dad said, "So, you know, passive aggressive. How do you like working for my daughter?" And the contractor's like, poof. And I looked at my dad. I was like, "Get out, get out." I said, "This guy that I paid a pretty penny to do what he said he was going to do isn't doing, and you're not backing me up." It was these little passive aggressive things like, she's crazy, she's a pain in the ass.
Right.
I was just like, get out. And so I was consistent with that. So if my brother called me and tried to stir the pot, I was like, I got to go, click.
Right.
So they were like, wow, she has no tolerance. Like, we can't poke the bear anymore.
Right.
I'm like,
Boundaries got made from self-love.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
and then it was just like, if you're going to, there was nothing left. There was nothing left in me. I needed every ounce of energy I could muster to take care of my children. And so, you know, thank God I had them. And it was like, you can't come into my life because I need this for my kids. So,
Right.
and it was over a year of like, don't call me. And then they slowly started to come back, and it was definitely me. I was a new person. I was monitoring them. I didn't need them anymore.
Right.
So now you're going to be in my life because of choice.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're my family or my blood. It's irrelevant.
I have the same thing going on with my family in terms of I went no contact for 3 years.
Wow.
Over.
Wow.
And still am with my sister, unfortunately. But my parents and I are having an incredible, great new
There you go.
connection. And I love them both. And it's been amazing.
What was the turning point for you?
I think it's because I just, like you said, I'm a new person. I'm coming to them as an individuated human now.
Yeah.
And so those things don't really operate. There was one thing with me and my mom where I made a boundary. She crossed it. I said, hey, with love, I'm going to cut off for a little bit, but I did it in a loving way. And then we came back again and it was totally fine. It wasn't dramatic. It was just
amazing. That
boundary can't be crossed. Please don't cross it. And it was cool.
Yep.
And so but now it feels like a much more loving relationship, at least to me, than it ever was before.
Absolutely.
And I think it was a direct result of doing all this, the brutality of going through the whole, completely breaking it apart. And I hope me and my sister can come back together too. Eventually. I think we will, this friendly vibes sent back and forth via the Dysfunctional family Chinese phone or whatever.
I know.
You know that
I
one.
totally understand.
But yeah.
I think what happens is we have to, it's how we become self-actualized. We have to really break the cord. We have to break, the family paradigm and find ourself in our own world, and then show up as that person so that the people in our life go, oh, that's who he is?
Yeah.
Oh, that's who she is? Okay.
Right. That's right.
You have to break away.
And then do you think you're healing generational pain, generational things? Because it's such a heavy thing. People who don't go through it have no idea how crazy.
I'm getting goosebumps. Yeah.
It is, right? It's like some kind of, you're going and you're healing generational stuff.
I believe it.
Don't you think?
I'm covered in goosebumps. I studied the work of Dr. Diamond, who worked with rats. And she proved that 8 generations later, a rat pup could have an aversion to a smell that a rat 8 generations prior was exposed to. So think about that. That's a traumatic, okay, so let's say it's trauma. So that means that, and even Carl Jung says that, there is this generational karma that we all carry. When I was in nursing school, they talked about junk DNA. Junk DNA, that doesn't really make sense. But now we understand that our bodies are holding information.
Right.
It's encoded in ways that we don't yet understand. So I can have an aversion to a scent or a smell that I've never smelt in my life experience, but maybe my grandmother did. You know, so, you know, It Didn't Start With You is another book where they talk about grandma being pregnant with mom, and the egg that you are is in mom's ovary the day mom is born. So in grandma is you in mom's, in form of an egg, or what will be you inside mom's ovary. You're not even born, you're just an egg. But in one female, if you will, is 3 generations. Pretty fabulous when you think about it.
Yeah.
And you think about vibrations, and we're mostly water, you know, and how, you know, you work in the music industry, you understand patterns, you understand vibrations.
Right.
And so a serious vibrational impact on grandma who's pregnant with mom, or the egg that will be mom. You know, it's generational for sure. At least I think so. So when you're healing it, and if altered universes are real, and
Or time and space is not
exactly
linear. It's not linear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then what I'm doing now, if it is happening across all space,
Right. And
pretty
all
fabulous,
time.
across all space and across all time.
It's amazing.
That's how important you are.
Yeah.
That's how important you are. That's how important a ripple is.
Yeah.
Because it's nothing is not being registered by the universe. Nothing.
Yeah. I realize that so much more and more, just even like just when I'm taking really good care of myself, even if I'm not posting about it, I just can feel that it's helping other people.
Absolutely.
I feel it now.
Yeah,
Like,
isn't that great?
it is great, because then also it gives you an automatic sense of purpose in doing
Yes.
it beyond just yourself.
Yeah. And you know, that I think that's what depression is. Depression is like you just feel so isolated, and you don't understand how important you are. You know, you think that, oh, because I don't have contact with my family, or I'm not in a relationship, or I just got fired from my job, you know, I'm useless. No, you're not. You could literally go from feeling desperate to taking care of a plant. And just the act of caring, just the vibration of caring, you know, mustering up love within you and nurturing, just the energy of it sends a ripple out into the universe. So you just start where you are.
Your I am enough helped me back then. I put it on my mirror, and it's, you know, I am enough. I mean, it's just like those kind of things. It's like really beneficial. Your work is incredible. You had a question, didn't you?
I got a million questions, but I'll just, about what you said. I was just curious, when you had the 3 kids and you did no contact with your family, with your abusive parents, did the kids still communicate with the parents by phone? Like, were you concerned that there would be like,
No,
or the
there was
kids
no
were cut off
contact.
too?
They didn't care to contact the kids either.
I see. But the kids didn't want to speak to their
No,
grandparents?
there
Or
was
they were
no,
aware?
No, there was, you know, in at least in my experience, it's sad, but it's true. It wasn't like my parents really went out of their way to have a really strong relationship with my children. You know, so it wasn't like there was this significant thing that was missing.
That's common with scapegoats. I've heard that the children of the scapegoats get treated kind of scapegoatish.
Absolutely.
That's so
Yeah,
messed
if you're not drinking the Kool-Aid they're mixing, they have no. You're just more of a nuisance than anything. So, you know, my kids got double whammy on both sides, because I was seen as like I wasn't following the rules. You know, I wasn't acquiescing. I was like, what's going on? This feels very controlling. I don't like the way this feels, you know?
Yeah.
And that presents a
That
problem.
first divorce, did the kids feel what you were feeling, or he didn't treat them the same way?
My
Like,
ex-husband?
yeah, were the kids aware? Did you have to sit them down and explain, this is what's going on?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So they had the same kind of abuse.
Well, you know, it's so hard. It's not a black and white issue, but like when I got divorced, I needed my children to understand, like, mommy and daddy are not well, and it's not going to get better, you know, and give me a year. I used to say to the kids, just give me a year to turn our life around. And I made good on that, you know. But with him, you know, he wasn't really involved with the kids' lives at all when we were married. And suddenly when we got separated, he was playing, you know, I'm here. You know, so it was very confusing for the kids. Look what mommy's doing. She's separating the family. Look at us. She's just breaking everybody up. Like, you know, suddenly he knew how to show up for football, and he knew how to show up for the karate classes and flag football. And it was like, what's happening? You know, so he definitely took advantage of that time and really exploited my desire to end the marriage, and twisted it to make it look like I was I just wanted to be single. Nothing could be further from the truth. I wanted to be in a healthy marriage that could grow, but it was so dysfunctional. And I thought, I can, and he even told me, he said, what you want doesn't exist. And I broke down and I cried. I was like, what you're saying is that we can't have healthy because you don't believe in it. And you can't achieve what you don't believe in. Like, you won't even strive for it. It doesn't exist in your world. So that means it won't exist in the kids' world. I'll never have an opportunity to show them something other than what we have. And that's just not enough for me because I grew up that way. So if I can't show them how to be healthy with you, I'm going to show them how to be healthy alone. Because I wanted my kids to have the ability to say, this isn't working, which my mother never learned how to do. And my sister didn't learn how to do. So I felt like I have to show my kids how to set a boundary and to believe in themselves, even when everyone else turns against them. And then over time, and my ex-husband used to say it, I used to say, you're a prophet. And that's really not a good thing, because he would say, what do you think is going to happen when I find a woman? You think I'm going to have time for our kids? And I said, I would hope so. And not long after my husband and I got married, he started dating seriously, and he had a falling out with the kids, and he hasn't tried to make up for that. And he's just out of their life, you know, and wants really nothing to do with them. So, and that's really sad. So once he realized he couldn't manipulate them anymore, it wasn't working.
They were no use to him.
No use to him. No use. It's hard to have healthy relationships with boundaries and disappointing people and being disappointed by people.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to navigate that. That's why I think it's so important to check your ego at the door. Like, and do you want to have a relationship with your kids? Because that means they might challenge you, and they might disagree with you, and you might have to self-reflect, and vice versa. They might have to challenge themselves and self-reflect. But if there's love there and commitment there and honor there, then you'll be able to navigate it. But it was just too much for him. It was just too difficult to check himself and to deal with growing children who weren't afraid of him anymore and weren't going to shut up just so you can buy them a Razor scooter, you know, or a new cell phone.
How did you start reparenting your kids once you got out of that dysfunctional relationship, and with this new awareness you had of all these psychological things, and you were saying you kind of were programming them incorrectly?
Yep.
How did you then flip it, and did you start communicating things you were learning to them directly, or how did you go about that?
Well, I knew that that I had modeled a lot of my mother's behavior, like no self-care. So I was like running myself into the ground, thinking that was what I needed to do.
Achievement or something.
Yeah, just life is supposed to be hard.
Right.
That was the program. You know, you always have to say 10 steps of everything. You can't spend money. You know, you can't spend money on yourself. You can't take care of yourself. It always has to be about everybody else, you know, almost like martyrdom, you know? So I was like, that's wrong. You know, I don't want my children to live like this. So it really was me learning about what codependency was, understanding how it manifested, and trying to flip the script. So instead of complaining all the time, I was like, well, where is my power in this? So if I had, like at the time I was a personal trainer, and I wasn't bringing enough money in. So I was like, I guess I got to get another job. So rather than complain about it, I just looked for another job. So I ended up with 3 jobs, and said, rather than complain about it, just be grateful about it. Show your children how to be self-reliant, build resilience in them. Because in the past, I would have had the 3 jobs and I would have complained about having the 3 jobs. So I was like, that's disempowering. That's not empowering. So I learned to be grateful for where I was. So rather than see the negative in things, I was like, no, see the positive in things. And I was talking about that out loud to the kids. You know, I would say, Mommy's going to go take a bath now, and, you know, don't disturb me. You know, so I was like, letting them see like, oh, you're supposed to carve out time for yourself. I would journal in front of them. Mommy, what are you doing? I'm journaling. Why? I don't feel good. I had an argument with Daddy today, and I just want to write about it and help me process it, because I don't want to hold on to this anger anymore, and when I journal about it, I get my feelings out on paper, and I can let it go. Mom, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to go meditate for a little while. What's meditation? Well, it helps me calm my mind down, because sometimes my thoughts race. And so just like talking about how to like really be self-reliant and self-responsible and acting it, knowing I was acting it. And if I had a problem with someone and I was struggling, I would talk it out like, wow, I was really upset that so-and-so said that, but I can't control this, but I can control that. And I have no right to control that in that person, but I don't have to go to that party if I don't want to, and I don't feel comfortable because of X, Y, and Z. So, maybe I'll plan another night for myself, and maybe I'll call another friend. So I was really just acting out health and responsibility on purpose.
Faking it till you make it in a way.
But trying to program them.
Yeah, I see.
Like, let it go, and if I heard them, I heard my son say, well, I know why you said that to my daughter. And I said, stop. How do you know why she said that? And I was trying to create pause. Like, you're going with a narrative that you don't know is correct.
Right.
And your body believes you. So it's a cognitive bias that you've created. You haven't even asked your sister why she said that.
Right.
You're just assuming you know.
Right.
Give her 5 minutes to explain herself, because there might be a side of this that you don't know anything about. So teaching them to pause. Wait, I don't really know why that person did that. I really don't know what that person's thinking. Let me ask them. Or, so-and-so said this, and I think that they should have done this. Well, do you have a right to control so-and-so? No, you really don't have a right to. Do you know why they said that? No. And so it really just teaching detachment, like, what are you bringing into your reality and why? But doing it on purpose.
Right. When did you decide to start the YouTube channel? And what was that like? What was it like posting the first few videos and stuff like that?
Terrifying. I think 2009. Again, what happened was I wrote The Road Back to Me, and I never expected anything. I thought, I'm just going to write this book and let it go. And it went to like 23 on Amazon overnight.
Wow.
So it was an Amazon bestseller overnight.
So you did do it for the money.
How does that happen? It's just word to mouth?
So what happened, so what ended up happening was I was writing articles and free articles online. And
blogs and stuff.
I had started a blog. And I had like manifestation. I didn't even know I was doing it. I was like author of The Road Back to Me. I knew that I was going to write that book one day. So when I was writing internet articles and I was doing articles in the local newspaper and stuff, because I was a personal trainer, so they were interested in the fitness that I was doing and interested in how people's lives were transforming from head to toe. Even their relationships were beginning to change. So I didn't even realize I was life coaching at the time. But I was, why do you self-sabotage? Why do you eat at 9:00 at night when you've been working out all week and you've been working so hard? Do you really think that you're going to be able to maintain your diet, or you don't? What's the conflicting beliefs? So I was doing that then. I didn't even know it. So I started writing articles for the local newspapers, signing my name, the author of The Road Back to Me. So by the time the book published, there were enough people that knew. And it went to number 23 overnight. And then people started calling me, like, can you talk to me about this adult child of alcoholic stuff? And can you talk to me about this codependency in relationships? I was like, sure. Then I started promoting my book. And the man that was promoting my book says, I think you should get certified as a life coach just for credibility. I was like, okay. And then it was just, this isn't braggadocious. I could not life coach the amount of people that wanted me to coach them because it was clicking. This I am not enough stuff. It's affecting every area of my life. I'm seeking validation. I feel invalidated. Then I get angry. Like, what's happening?
I mean, these dynamics play out all over. There's
Everywhere.
no relationship that doesn't have some of these dynamics in them. Anyway, I don't think.
Yeah, and it's really, I think the healthier you are and the more self-loving you are, then the less you need someone to validate you. So the
Right.
less wounded you are when they don't read your mind.
But how many people are walking around healthy and self-validating? I mean, this is a world full of like people that are not doing that, you know?
Well, that's why I created the videos.
Right. So then you started the YouTube.
So then I was like, you know what, this is really hitting home, and let me just share this message on YouTube. Maybe it'll hit someone, resonate with someone, you know? And I was terrified. And I just kept doing them and doing them and
On your
doing
phone,
them.
or how'd you record
No,
them?
I'm on the Mac.
Oh, just on
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right through iMovie.
Right.
I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I had no clue. I didn't know how to edit, add music, nothing, you know, but just like blip, you know,
Yeah.
YouTube channel, and just wherever it goes, it goes.
Huh.
Yeah. And then again, it was just when you get feedback, you know, and I was just talking to my husband about that today. It's like, it's so bizarre to me. You know, I was just in Utah last week filming a docuseries, and he's like, "How do you feel?" I was like, "It's just so bizarre because being called crazy your whole life, and then being married for 11 and 12 years, and you're crazy and you're a flake, and no one thinks like you, and people are buying my book and listening to me on YouTube. I'm sitting here with you.
Yeah.
You made me a beautiful painting. I'm a dear one. I am enough." Like,
oh man, well, you changed
What?
lives. You changed lives. But now you must know that. You must get so many people that, I mean, you've given so much to the world, you know, so it's like
still bizarre.
yeah, it's still bizarre. But
Still bizarre.
but when your channel grew the way it did, and did you have some kind of like feeling of pride again, like towards all your family and all that, of like, like
It's so funny.
you're like, how you like
crazy
me
now.
how you like me now? Was
It's
there
just-
like a how you like me now?
It's so
like,
funny.
come on, you must have
No,
some
you
how you
know-
like me now. Come on.
You know what? It's just, it's classic dysfunctional family.
Right.
Like, my parents never validated any
Right.
of my success, because it was like, if we validate it, then we're validating that we were wrong about her.
Right.
Right. So let's just pretend that we don't see it.
Right.
They've never read any of my books. To this day, my sister, my brother, my mother, father, they both died never reading my stuff.
I'm sorry.
Secretly,
it's
they
okay.
must have.
No,
No.
absolutely not. No.
Maybe not.
No. I think my dad deliberately denied it because he didn't want to see it.
Right.
Like he didn't want to see what he couldn't handle. I mean, we bumped heads all the time, you know, like, Dad, you're wrong. I'm not wrong. You're wrong. I'm like, okay, all right. Yeah, no problem. But you know, he was my mother's caretaker. You know, she had MS, she had diabetes, right? She's in renal failure. She's delusional. I'm like, Dad, she's suffering. Don't tell me how to take care of my wife. My mom was in renal failure. He didn't even know.
Yeah.
You know, shoving pills down her throat, and she's vomiting, and like, Dad, you know, or she had a stroke and he's not even aware that this was a stroke, you know. Like, you can't take care of mommy. Don't tell me I take really good care of your mother. I'm like, you are delusional.
Right.
He couldn't even admit that he was not equipped to take care of someone in this state. And God forbid if I brought that to his attention. You know, there was conflict. So I was the what do you say, the burr under his saddle. You know, like, oh, she's going to be the one to tell me. You know, like, keep her out here. So I think for his own self-preservation, no, he didn't want to read my stuff.
Since they've passed, do you feel that from beyond they give you messages that they
Yeah.
love you and understand now and are sorry?
Yeah, I do. I have better conversations with my mother now than I ever did.
Right.
And she ended up having a couple of strokes and dementia.
Right.
And it was the weirdest thing. It was like all of her passive aggressiveness was gone. All of her wounds, her pain body was gone.
Wow.
And I remember we went to go see her, and she looked at me, she said, "I love you."
See?
And I was like, wow,
God.
what? It was like through dementia, you see me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because the
pain
sickness was
gone.
gone. And it's
Yep.
like that at the core, everyone is, I think, good and loving and wants to
Absolutely.
do their best.
Yeah, I think that's every soul, I think, will eventually get to the point where they realize that I was enough and I never had to make anyone feel less than enough just to make me feel enough.
Right.
I think every soul is on that path. And if we can get out of the way of that
Right.
and stop resenting people that aren't where we are, then the quicker we'll evolve. It goes back to the prayer we started off this podcast with.
Yeah, Ho'oponopono. Yeah, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. That's beautiful about your mom, by the way. Yeah. You were talking about metacognition in a video, and I love that subject of like being the observer of your thoughts, and
changes everything.
Yeah, and I sometimes bring that up on this podcast. Like, I'm afraid. Who's asking who's afraid? You know, or who's afraid? Who's asking who's afraid? You just keep like
exactly
up leveling your go higher on the perch of consciousness and become the observer of your thoughts. Some people can really get their head around that, and other people are like, that sounds weird. What are you talking about? Like,
but at least if someone's going like, oh, that's weird, that's good, because again, you're hitting the pause button.
Right.
So can you notice what you notice?
Right.
Can you be the awareness? Can you be aware of the space between your thoughts, because you're not your thoughts?
Yeah.
Or do you attach to your thoughts?
Right.
Is there space to observe your thought?
Yeah.
Because that's what you need. Because if you're not observing your thoughts, you think you are your thoughts.
Right.
And you don't realize that your thoughts are like watching television.
Narcs think they're their thoughts. Go ahead, though. Sorry.
Yes.
Thoughts are like watching television.
Yeah. So if you turn on the television, you just see a television program. Those are like thoughts in the mental field.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't realize that you can change the channel.
Yeah. Or turn the TV off.
Or turn it off and be silent.
You're the TV in this analogy?
Well, you're this. I was saying it, but like there's some. I got it from somewhere where there's the film is the thoughts, and the screen is what you are. You're the infinite, like, now the screen that can.
You're everything.
You're not affected by the film that's on the screen.
You don't have to be.
You don't have to be.
No.
And those are your thoughts.
So the way I describe it sometimes is, if you imagine a stage, right? So you're the stage. You're the actor on the stage. You're the writer of the play, right? You're the observer of the play. Right? So you're everything. So you're an actor in your own play. And when you start to awaken, you're like, I can change the ending.
Yeah.
Right? But when you're asleep, it's sort of like The Sims. You ever play the Sims game? Like,
nah, he probably has.
No, that's one game I never.
Yeah. So it's like virtual reality. So
games.
It's like you're programmed to behave and think a certain way, but you don't realize it. And then you come to planet Earth and you're just ding, 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 ding. You are experiencing the world through your programming. So it's like almost like a character in a video game. Like, they're programmed, right, to behave a certain way in a video game, but they don't know that they're programmed, and they don't know that you or the programmer can turn this character into anything that they want, right?
Right.
So when you're living below the veil of consciousness, you're a character in a game, and you're acting out the programming.
Versus being the player.
Exactly.
And picking the
right.
Correct.
The skin color.
Yeah, that's a good. That's a great. Yeah, that's the meta.
That I understood.
Yeah, that's metacognition. Then,
Yes.
like, you're
that
the one.
I just understood. Yeah. She put it in video game.
Exactly.
Perspective.
That's why she's. That's why
I
Lisa's
get it.
Lisa.
Then you're right. Okay.
So you have the opportunity to change the character, to change the direction, to change where they live, what they do, what they think. You have the ability. And people feel hopeless because they don't believe that they have that ability, or they don't believe that they have they don't know it's possible. And then on top of it, okay, now I know it's possible. How do I do it? That's where I come in. I create tools. And
thoughts are addictive. Like, it's addictive to just identify as your thought forms and go through that whole thing. And it's spooky to change your perspective. And
it was a moment where I was like, oh, I'm not my thoughts. Then what the F am I?
Right.
Okay, so if I can't trust this thought, and it's the only thing that's in the ship, what do I do next? So I can't trust what's coming through this field? No, you cannot. It's nonsense. Plus when you understand that you're also subconsciously and subliminally, hit with information from the media constantly, what to think and what to feel, what to be afraid of. Advertisements. There's so much interference patterns coming into your auric field, and your mind, that you really have to develop respect for your mind and say, no, I'm going to control what I think and what I focus on. And I realize that as it is below, so shall it be above. So what goes into me genetically, karma, generational karma, that's not my fault. That's my blueprint, or my genetic blueprint. But the way that I think can affect gene expression. So I have to we really hopefully, and I really appreciate what you're doing, because you are offering people through your audience the ability to think about the way they think and change the course of their life.
Yeah.
So you are not a victim of your genes by any means.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to start a YouTube channel about MPD, like when I was in the main huge vortex of it, you know, and never did, from fear or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I wrote a blog, but it was like, I don't know. It was too much or something, the whole thing. But I never did. But this podcast came as a result of that, I think. And so sitting here with you is kind of like this like amazing moment for me in that way. So
yeah, I hope it's validating. And it's, you know, when you learn something about yourself, you're really learning it about everybody, because your truth is my truth. It's your truth. It's my husband's truth. It's everyone's truth.
Yeah.
You know, we're all 99.999% the same.
Yeah.
So, you know, and your brain works the same way that my brain works. So as an infant, you needed exactly what I needed. So if you didn't get what you needed and I didn't get what I needed, and we had similar backgrounds, then the way we think is going to be similar. Then the way we behave is going to be similar. Well, then the healing process is going to be similar too.
Yeah. And on that topic, for me, prayer is a huge, huge part of what I leaned on. And especially for people going into a situation where they might be no contact from literally everybody in their lives, which is what can happen. It's the loneliest place in the world. And I know God is a weird subject for people or whatever, but I needed prayer then like never before. And I needed that connection like never before. I'm wondering, how do you feel like prayer is an important aspect of recovery, and for you personally?
Yeah, well, what saved me, I think, was that there was one day I was driving down the road and I looked at this huge mammoth of a tree, and it just hit me, like whatever and whoever, because I went through this phase where how could there be a God? You know, I had known a little boy that died of cancer, and I was like, nope, can't be a God. I rejected it. It just doesn't make sense. Like, why would God allow these things to happen? So then I realized that my perspective was very, I was coming through ego. I was coming through pain. I wasn't looking at the huge picture, you know.
Right.
And I was just driving down the highway and I saw this huge tree, and I was like, you know what? Whatever created that tree created me. You know, whatever created the sky created me. And I suddenly started to feel a connection to everything. And I was like, wow, it's just... And then if you think about energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It just changes form. So my human idea of life is physical. And if when I step out of thinking life is more than just physical, then there is no such thing as death. There's a transition, right? So then I let go of the fear of death. And I was like, like an ice cube. I can be an ice cube, or I could be water, or I could be gas. So it's still H2O, but my form has changed. So I will always be, you will always be. But in a physical world, you need flesh to, you know, walk around on planet Earth with, very much like you need a spacesuit to walk around on Mars, or the moon. So I began to realize, like, you know, it's not just this egoic, painful experience. You know, a life is so much more than what I think it is. And there has to be a reason for why things happen and when things happen.
There's so much we don't see. I mean,
and I'm okay with that
we
now.
don't know. And it does seem unfair, dramatically unfair in many cases, and awful in many cases. But there's so much we don't know.
I think what happened to me was when I let go, when I literally let go, and I was just like, okay, you know, what am I really trying to do here as a soul that's evolving, you know? And to me, it was just detach. Like, you are a part of everything, you know, and everything is an extension of you. But try not to attach to things, because everything is transitory. Nothing is permanent. And when I think things should be permanent, I'm going to suffer, whether it's a relationship or a life or a house or a job. When I think that thing should not change, I suffer, because everything is meant to change, and I'm meant to adapt with the change. And when I don't adapt to what's happening and I'm in resistance to it, I'm going to suffer. And that's why it's so important to accept how you feel, because if mom or dad or your sister or your brother crosses a boundary, you have to accept how you feel and be non-resistant to how you feel, so you can exert a boundary, so you can stay safe. and continue to evolve and grow in spite of what's happening outside of you. It's pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, that is heavy stuff.
But you need metacognition to do it.
Right.
So I have to be able to notice how I feel and notice what I notice when I'm in the experience of someone and not deny it. So I have to notice from a detached space, how do I feel around this person? And what can I control versus what can't I control? And what's right for me? And what decision can I make out of love, not of anger and resentment and vindictiveness, and wanting to take someone down? Because I think that has to be a premise, like goodwill towards everyone. So just because I don't want you in my life doesn't mean I want you to be destroyed.
Right.
I just need to protect myself from your lack of self-awareness.
Right.
Doesn't mean I don't love you. It just means that because I know that you lack self-awareness and you lack self-love, you're not going to be able to understand me or love me. Therefore, I have to protect myself from you and your inability to see yourself.
What a great way to frame that for anybody listening that needs to tell a dysfunctional person lovingly in their life to fuck off. That would be the way to do it.
Yeah. I say
excuse my French. I was just being funny, but
I say namaste and I'm gonna walk away.
Namaste, walk away.
Namaste, walk away.
Oh, that's a new song. The Namaste, walk
there you
away.
Go. I might write that song. I'll help you.
I'm doing the Namaste, walk away.
Yeah. There really is, and if
that's a good one.
And that's all loving yourself.
Yeah.
So when I walked away from my parents, it wasn't because I didn't love them. It was because I knew they were so dysfunctional.
Right.
And I knew that they were working off of each other. There was a very enmeshed relationship. My father supported my mother's anger towards me, and my mother supported his ignorance and his narcissism, and just, I got to walk, namaste, I got to walk, do you, boo?
Yeah.
But I literally have to cut myself out so I can find the right path.
You evolve into that though, because at first that level of betrayal you feel when you wake up to that thing is intense. It's like, whoa, you mean you were messing with me on purpose?
Yeah, and you knew it.
And you knew it? Like when you first wake up to that, like it's like, holy moly.
That moment gives you the it's interesting because I look at the word mother and I see other, I'm like mother, other, and partner, parent. I see partner, parents. It's just the symbolism in the language is just,
it's intense.
It really is intense,
Yeah. Father, what's father?
I haven't thought about father, but I don't know. I haven't thought about father, but parents and partner definitely, and and pattern. All the letters that, like, oh my gosh, like my mother was the other, and my partner represented my parents. It's just very bizarre. But this, why have you forsaken me experience, like, the symbolism of Christ on the cross, where even, this well-known spiritual figure has this moment of, Father, how have you forsaken me? Even the one of the most well-known teachers of all time has that experience of, well, you've abandoned me, what's up? And then he comes off the cross, or then he's liberated. Like, oh, okay, I am enough. I'm enough. I'm enough. Even though you've abandoned me, I am enough. And I think we have to fall back on that. I think recovery work would be so much easier if people knew at your core, minus everything that you've ever said and everything you've ever done, every really screwed up thing you've ever said, you're enough. And the things that your behavior is in response to the things that you've experienced as a child. And the way that you think is really a product of the way that you have interpreted your experiences as a child. So if you don't think you're good enough, that's a valid feeling, but it's not true. Right. You are enough. But the feeling is very, very valid. But it's not true.
Have you thought about this whole world being like a big soul growing thing? Like that this is the channels that we grow our souls? Because the amount of this kind of situation going on is just overwhelming. It's more common than not, I think. And like when you first wake up to it too, it's like the thing of when you stare at the abyss stares back at you, or what you like sort of perceive, you bring into your life more and more. So when I first woke up to MPD, I was seeing it everywhere and in every relationship and stuff. And that's calmed down. But what do you think about that?
I think it's normal. You know, it's sort of like when you buy a green Toyota, you suddenly see green Toyotas
Or
everywhere.
when you have a kid and you start seeing strollers everywhere.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it's the same thing. It's like, were they there yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that you're paying attention to it more. So your attention to this experience has made you more attuned to the experiences were always there. MPD was always there.
Right.
You just didn't recognize it.
Yeah.
You know,
or you didn't know what it was.
you know, it's like,
It didn't have a name.
can you see a dinosaur in the woods if you've never seen a dinosaur, or would you just see green trees?
Right.
But the minute, dinosaur, I understand. My brain understands that figure. I can recognize that figure. That's what that is. You know, so I think it comes from the experience. Then what happens is the shock of this is a thing. Like, people are hurting one another on purpose. They're literally jacking with their head to make them question their reality for the purpose of controlling them and keeping them underfoot. Like, that's messed up. You know,
It is messed up.
it's so messed up, you know, and then you start to see how people do it overtly and covertly. And and then, you know, you have this how dare you experience now.
The anger and the rage, frankly, the rage.
Yeah,
like,
it's normal.
Yeah, the rage you have to get past is unbelievable.
I think you have to embrace it because to me, that's your skin.
I became a boxer. I got into
believe it.
boxing, and I got way into it.
Yeah.
Like late in the day, you know.
Yeah. Why do you think that was important to you?
I think it was because I realized I had to just like show myself that I could fight back and that I could empower myself and just you know, it was when I was completely no contact and like you know, there was just a couple people that brought me into this boxing community, beautiful people, Romano and Liz, and I embraced it. And then I was watching remember that Tanya Harding movie that came out?
Yes.
And that's very much about,
I'm telling
yeah, very much about MPD abuse and the
Yep.
effects of it. And she was definitely a victim of that. And it shows you how that can devastate a life
Yep.
that could have otherwise been glorious. And her life is glorious also still.
Right.
Like, she's an amazing human. But then, you know, at the end, had forgotten she had become a boxer, and it was like when I saw
wow.
that, I was like, there's like, yeah, just like these correlations that happen in recovering from these type of events is pretty phenomenal. And
Maybe boxing gave you an opportunity to come home to yourself
Yeah.
and to control your feelings and to give your emotions an avenue. And you know, when you make contact on that bag, that makes sense, and it's a very empowering feeling to feel like you're in
Yeah.
control of your emotions, and they make sense.
yeah,
You know, in getting that out there, you found an avenue to release the feelings that you were feeling, and you went from feeling powerless and naked, you know, and 2 years old on the Brooklyn Bridge, traffic coming at you both ways, to feeling like, oh no, I've got this. What can I control?
yeah,
You know, and it helps you come back to yourself. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
that feeling of abandonment, you know, like, and it's not just a lot of people feel abandoned, you know, in life, but to add the layer of betrayal and persecution,
that's intense.
ooh, and by the people supposed to love you.
And the fact that also sometimes this takes people very far down to the point, and sometimes it makes them kill themselves and
Yes.
everything like that. So when you see how dark it actually can be, that's the other thing that really freaks you out and makes you, you know.
Yeah, I've had clients whose husbands have said, you know, you're really better off just killing yourself. You know, no one's going to believe you anyway. Like, look at you. You're just, you know, look at what a mess you are. Like, you can't even trust the way that you think. Meanwhile, he's taunting her and cheating on her, broke her arm, you know, and physically abuses her, and then just throws in, maybe you should just kill yourself. Why? So he can play the martyr when she does kill herself.
Right.
You know, this is how diabolical it can become, you know, when you are under the trauma bond of someone who has love bombed you, made you feel really good about yourself, and then starts to devalue you, and then makes you think it's your fault that they're pulling away, and then you start to chase after them, and they start an argument, and it's your fault that they started the argument. It's your fault that there's an argument, your fault that they're abandoning you, you know, and you just keep chasing after them, and little by little, they're wearing you down. It's your fault. They give you a little bit of validation, and they pull it away again. It's like, you know, and then they cheat on you, and it's your fault.
And that person needs to go from MPD videos to learn about what's happening, but then they have to graduate to codependency videos to learn that they are actually have to work on themselves and empower themselves to get out of being a victim.
Yeah. Well, first thing you have to know, that's why I always say you can't fix a hole in the wall you don't see.
Right.
So that's why, learning about narcissistic personality disorder and narcissism and traits of narcissism, it helps you put a label on it. Now, suddenly it's like, my experience makes sense. It's actually predictable.
Oh yeah.
When I coach people, they're like,
it's
how'd
all
you know?
the same. It's incredible how it all works exactly the same.
Right.
That's the other
textbook.
Yeah.
I might be ignorant to the whole
You're
subject.
not that ignorant.
No.
You have
about what I'm about to say.
Oh.
I never heard of NPD or gotten the characterization of it until he started talking about it and like opened my eyes. Okay, this is what's happening. This is what it is. And obviously it all made perfect sense to me. And I know someone who, had abusive relationship with their parents, and from my side view, I kind of understood what was going on, who was being abusive, I was affecting them, but there was not like a label for it for me. Like, I got it. But if this thing is so common, how is it not more mainstream?
That's a good question.
That people go to therapy. Maybe that's why I said I'm ignorant. Cause maybe it is full on mainstream.
Well,
but
is, but not.
I never heard about it. When someone, and again, not to belittle anyone, when someone says life coach to me, I was like, oh, so it's one of those things. But when you see how many people really need that kind of help, how is it not like in the health system, or maybe it is. How is it not?
Because we live in a system.
How is it not that much more talked about and talk like late night, whatever?
More,
How is it not in the public consciousness,
taught at schools
on that level?
Yeah.
And then in connection with that, so you're helping people who suffer from it. Are there programs that try to rehabilitate, if that's even possible, people who do it? Does that exist?
Oh, like for narcissism?
Yes, or is it not? Because the people are treating the problem, like the damage, but they're not. No one's treating the problem. Did I word that right?
Yeah, I get it. I think it's multifaceted. I think, first of all, like if you've been married to someone with narcissism, you're in therapy. The narcissist isn't in therapy.
Right.
The narcissist doesn't think
there's
anything wrong.
The problem.
And then you walk into therapy like I did. I went to 4 or 5 therapists who wanted to give me medication. I couldn't identify the problem because I was told I was the problem. Right. So, and then the few times, the once or twice where I said, my husband says this, well, we can't talk about your husband because he's not here. And only one therapist ever asked me about my childhood. Is there any alcoholism in your family? And my response was, no, my parents don't drink. And he said, listen to me. That's not what I asked you. I said, is there any alcoholism in your family? And went, actually, again, cause to pause. And I was like, well, yeah, both sets of my grandparents are alcoholics, and my mother's twin brother and her other brother. So yeah, I would say I come from a long line of alcoholics. He was the only one. So if we don't have trauma-informed therapists, if we don't have trauma-informed pediatricians, if we keep labeling children as ADHD or ADD,
and giving them meth.
Yeah. If we keep medicating children and thinking they're obstinate defiant disorder, and we're not understanding what was the first year of that baby's life like? Did that baby feel safe, or did that baby feel like their home was unsafe? What was going on in that baby's life? Because in that first few months of life, first year of life, the brain is being organized for socialization. So was this baby isolated, or were they exposed to a bunch of different people? Back in the day, you lived in a family with grandma and grandpa, 2 grandmas, 2 grandpas, aunts and uncles, and children got exposed to lots of different people. So their brains were wired for connection, right? And so you isolate a child, and there's screaming, there's yelling, and it's cold, and the child's not getting fed on time, it's being ignored. This child's brain is wired for stress. There's a stress response, and it has to organize itself for survival, not thriving. Survival. And your body can't survive and thrive at the same time.
No.
It has to make a decision.
Flight or flight turns off creativity.
You're right.
Straight away.
So, and if I can't, in my 12-week class, in it's week 3, we start asking people about what kind of dreams did you have as a child? And people like, I don't remember. Not your fault, because you were in survival. Your brain could not tap into that creative center because you were too worried about what mommy was going to do or daddy was going to do, or, maybe it was money. Maybe there wasn't enough money in your family, and, or maybe there was alcoholism or domestic violence, so you're wired for protection, not creativity. And so now as an adult, you keep recreating whatever's been downloaded into you, and you don't even realize that you have the ability to change the video game. You have the ability to change the scenery by imagining something different.
And society doesn't want you to know that information because we live in a society structured on this play of narcissism. There's gaslighting constantly on global levels.
Yes,
there's
I'm aware of now
there's smear campaigns on global. So this plays out like in the macro, in the whatever is the opposite of macro, micro
and macro.
Micro and macro.
I think a big problem is narcissists don't go into therapy unless they're forced into therapy. Let's say they have a drinking problem and they keep losing their job and they've got to go into anger management. And then when they go into therapy, they think they're smarter than the therapist. So they're just waiting for an opportunity to prove the therapist wrong. So number 1, narcissists aren't getting treated. Number 2, if you come from a family of narcissism, you grow up with anxiety. And so you're being treated for anxiety. Or maybe you drink too much, so now you have alcoholism. Or maybe you get into drugs. Or maybe you're in a bad relationship. So now your focus becomes what's happening inside my relationship. So what's really going on is not being addressed because now life has got complicated and your behaviors that are rooted in your lack of identity are manifesting in adult situations, and you're focusing on the adult situations. You're not pausing to ask, why am I this way? So if you're being treated for anxiety, you think, oh, I have an anxiety disorder. I had panic disorder. My doctor's like, oh, you've got some weird anxiety disorder. It was like, okay, but when I finally started to do my own work because I couldn't handle taking medication because I was taking care of the kids. So I was like, don't like the way I feel. And I was like, no, I have to figure this out. And thank God, I tried going to AA, my uncle took me to AA meetings. He's like, maybe that'll help you. I was like, okay. I went to Al-Anon, CODA meetings, anything.
Did you get anything out of those?
What I got was the sense that I wasn't alone, that there was a lot of pain in the world, and I just thought I was so alone, and I realized there's so many people struggling.
That's the spirituality of that place, is when everyone talks about what they're going through. That's the best thing about it is you're like, oh, this is the plane where everyone's dealing with this kind of stuff. And
we're real. Like, these people are willing to stand up and say, I screwed up. They're willing to stand up and say, I need help. Like, there's a vulnerability here. And so, I got a lot out of it. And now, medications come a long way. So I think that now, like, Lexapro probably would have been really helpful for me back then because I was so reactive. And I think it would have allowed me to be calm enough to observe my thoughts, because the way I learned to do this is just I white knuckled it the whole way. I was literally got marble notebooks and just was writing down my thoughts. Like, what did I catch today? What did I catch today? What did I hear today? What negative thought did I hear today? And then I would reprogram that negative and say, no, this is inappropriate. That's your mother's voice. That's a voice of lack. That's not of God. That's not of divinity. That's not of your true nature. Come up with something that's more positive. And I would it was so fake in the beginning, like, you are enough, you are enough, you are enough, you are enough.
Right.
And then I finally was like, I am enough. I really, at my core, I am enough. And then studying the law of attraction, I was like, wow, slice me up to the point where you can't slice me up anymore, and I'm nothing but light. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, I'm light at my core. I really am light. So that's pretty fabulous.
100-watt light bulb.
That's right.
At least you're about 1,000,000-watt light bulb.
Thanks.
But what do you think gave you the drive though to do all that hard work? Because so many people don't have that kind of fire in them or that kind of self-preservation instinct. Where do you think that comes from?
I think it came from, that's why I'm able to say thank you, Mom, and thank you, Dad, because when they walked away, well, my sister's always been the one that they've taken care of and coddled. And I see now, like at the time, it was like they're choosing her, they're not choosing me, you know? And, but now I see the benefit in that because there was no rescue boat for me to jump into. And I had so much love and compassion for my children. I had so much responsibility, and I just understood it in a very logical sense. Like, we're all victims of our environment, as are my children. I studied the work of Bruce Lipton, you know.
I love Bruce Lipton.
Epigenetics.
Yeah, neuroplasticity. I love Joe Dispenza too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You are supernatural.
We are.
Abraham Hicks.
Amen. I studied all of them.
Yeah.
And I was like, how can I apply all of these lessons to codependency and narcissistic abuse and subconscious programming and reprogramming my mind and becoming the character in a play that I actually want to be, you know? And that's how, you know, I eventually did it. But it was really my kids.
Right. That's amazing.
It's ultimately, and I was scary, right? Like ultimate responsibility. Like, you are their parent.
Yeah.
You are their parent. At least, you know, if they end up in therapy, you know, at least really try to show them something different.
Right.
Because I have to I always tell my kids, listen, at the end of the day, no matter where you end up, remember, I tried.
Right.
I tried to be as conscious as possible.
That's all you can do.
I really did try.
Yeah.
You know.
Do they know that?
Yeah, they know that.
That's
they know
great.
That. Yeah, they know that. I'm really, you know, my son was married to someone who, let's just say, has a very, how do I say this?
MPD-ish vibe.
Well, you said it. I didn't say it.
Right. That's why I said it.
But thank you. But was taken for a ride.
That odor you get.
With that MPD vibe.
Well, was taken for a ride, and we warned him, and he was just classic codependent. No, you know.
He got love bombed.
Tremendously love bombed, future faking, triangulated, separated from us. The whole, I mean, I saw it happening. I was like, wow, you know. Textbook. And no matter what I said, he was just, you know, like, you know, gonna throw himself into this relationship and save her, and, you know.
But that happens a lot.
Yep.
A lot.
Yep.
So he's good now, or is he getting working his way out? Or?
He got a divorce. So, but the moment, you know, you're never a prophet in your own town, right? So my own family doesn't read my books. They don't take my advice.
They don't know you're an icon. They don't know you're an icon yet.
My son would say, "You're not my life coach," and I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "Just be my mom."
Fair enough.
Okay.
Though. You know, he needs to individuate.
And that's what I had to let him do.
Yeah.
You know, I write the last book I just wrote, Codependency Manifesto. You know, in the beginning, I talk about, because I was writing that book when he was going through this. And I was so triggered. I was like, no, this is, again, attachment. And this was part of my spiritual evolution, because I was attached to, the thinking was, if I go through a divorce and I pay attention to codependency and I represent non-codependency, my children should avoid these codependent dynamics, and certainly they won't get married and have to get divorced. Right. And here it is.
How's this going to look?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't so much worried about that. It was just I wanted to spare them.
Right.
And then I'm on the phone with my son, who's this big, strong kid, you know, like you, and he's crying. Like, Mom, I can't trust my thoughts. Like, I can't wrap my head around the lies, and I can't believe I did this and I ignored that, and everything that he's saying were things that I said about his dad. So here my son is stepping into my reality. So it was like, wow, you know, and I just felt myself like I failed. Nah. Yeah. But that's how I felt in the moment.
Right. Yeah.
And then my husband said, "Lisa, he's not you," you know, and I was like, what? And he's like, he's not you. He's got a 401k plan. He doesn't have 3 little kids. You know, he's got a great job. I was like, yeah, that's not me.
He'll be fine.
And so it really was me detaching and allowing, like, stop attaching to this idea that this kid shouldn't have to go through this for his own evolution.
Right.
Let it go.
That's what I mean. It seems like these things are like, it's just, well, it's like what Freud says, the needs of the child can't possibly be met by the parents. Like we're wired for dysfunction. It's hardwired into the human experience. So,
yeah, well, we have an ego. And I think, listen, this is why I think we really have to give ourselves a break. We're born unconscious into an unconscious world. with an ego that's reactive, with a brain that's primitive, with an amygdala that's reactive, with a fight or flight system that knocks the timekeeper of the brain offline when it gets activated, right? So I have this subconscious programming. I'm 95% unconscious most of the time, right? How could I not have problems?
Right.
How could I not?
Well, when you put it like that.
How could I, right? How could the average person who is not being taught about metacognition? I have a 4-year-old niece, and every chance I get, Aunt Lisa, I'm so afraid. I go, why are you afraid? You just get her to talk about it. Alice is my dog. She's kind of big, and she's like, well, I'm afraid Alice is going to eat me. I don't say, don't say that, or that's silly. I say, well, why do you think Alice is going to eat you? Well, she comes over to me and she licks her lips when she's next to me, and I'm afraid she's going to eat me. And I validate her. I could understand why you would think Alice would eat you.
I thought Alice was going to eat me too, so if that's any consolation.
Yeah, but the goal is to really just validate, and like, because neuroses, you can have an unrealistic fear, and your body can respond to this fear as if it's real.
Yeah.
You have a cognitive bias, and until you develop metacognition and notice what you notice, you're stuck.
Yeah.
You're stuck.
That's real true. I think to answer your question about why isn't MPD knowledge completely mainstream, is it is becoming that way. And she's one of the foremost people bringing that knowledge to the forefront. But it's also rooted in weird covert psychology.
Yep.
Also, I think there's a play of spiritual war going on, of light and dark, and that is definitely of the dark. And so the dark seems to be owning a lot of the narrative in some kind of ways, I think. So I think it's purposefully suppressed, that kind of information on some level, but I also think it's just a hard thing for people to wrap their head around, and it is becoming mainstreamized on some level. It now is. I mean, it is and it isn't. Not to the degree you say.
At the end of the day, what's going to heal it is radical self accountability. And you can't be someone who wants to play in the light and not be completely self accountable. That's scary.
The Ho'oponopono, right back to that.
Exactly.
I love you. It's like taking responsibility for everything in your field of consciousness. That was the thing that I think did heal my relationship with my family. I started doing that mantra. I would go on long runs and just have it as the mantra going, and I would just be thinking about all the people in my world that I even thought betrayed me, or that and I was taking responsibility for all of the relationships and healing them within myself using that mantra. And that really got me past like this weird anger part of the MPD recovery thing I was in.
And the dark doesn't want you to do that.
And it broke that glass ceiling, the Ho'oponopono. That's why I'm always on and on about it. But that also confused me, because then I was like, wait, I have to take responsibility for everything.
I think that's, we're all part of each other's stories, right? So, when I look at the people that I've dated in my life, the last narcissist that I dated was only a few short months, but he was so smart. He had actually groomed me, picked me, investigated me, targeted me, and I felt so exposed and so like, wow, like you hunted me, right? And you learned about me, and you used all of this information against me. So that was a psychological, really got inside my head. And even though it was the shortest relationship I've ever had, it really messed me up for a while. And then I took the position of radical self-responsibility and asked myself, not that I'm responsible for being abused, but I asked myself, what could I learn about this? And, I asked, what did you miss, or is there anything that you missed? And the truth came, well, you ignored red flags. There were definitely red flags that I kind of like, well, no, And then I said, okay, well, the next time I'm not going to ignore any red flags. I'm going to honor myself completely, And I remember Oprah years and years, a long time ago, she did a show where she asked women on the stage, like, did you know? And one woman had her face slashed. Another woman had been doused in gasoline and lit on fire by a boyfriend. And she asked each woman, and every single woman said, I had a feeling. But this is why my work always goes back to, well, how do you feel? And can you just stay in that space of how do you feel about this relationship and that person, and take responsibility for how you feel and set a boundary out of love? Because then you're not going to resent this person. You're not going to feel disempowered by this relationship. You're just saying, pass the butter, you know, or no, thank you. And then I'm going to try to align myself with someone that I feel more in alignment with. And then I'll be able to thrive in that relationship, you know? So it's tough, you know.
It's tough when you're getting love bombed, when you're coming out of loneliness. And like, I mean, even if you're working on yourself, loneliness happens. It's hard to be alive. It's hard to just like be in your own company all the time. And then somebody comes along and it's like love bombing and future faking. That stuff's powerful. Mix sex into the mix with that's like that kind of epoxy glue or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like all those elements. And then you see a red flag and it's like, like hindsight 2020, like, oh, I should have known. But it's like you had all these other things going on. And then, you know, and then the betrayal or the sort of, trauma bond, where then like some abusive thing happens and that bonds you even more for some weird psychological snafu of the human condition.
Yeah, and that's it. That's so your psychology, that's why it's so important to notice what you notice and understand how ego is designed to protect you, period.
Right.
You know, so protect you from feeling pain, protect you from being pained further by another human being. So ego is not the enemy. Ego is just the unconscious part of you that's just misunderstood and misguided and doesn't have wisdom. Right. So the more wisdom that you have, the more you understand your psychological self, the more you understand how easy it is to manipulate a human being. Just make them afraid. That's how Hitler won the war. You know, and not that he won the war, but that's how Hitler was able to do what he did.
Got all that power.
He got inside people's heads. He disempowered them from the inside. You know, and once a narcissist disempowers you from inside, you know, the rest is pretty easy. So make you afraid. You know, what I learned to do with my ex-husband and even with my family was I needed to become the person they made me afraid to become. The one with the big mouth, the difficult one, the one that went against the grain. I had to become exactly what they taught me to be afraid of becoming in order to become myself. So that was me facing the fear of what they were going to think and facing the fear of their abandonment and rejection. I had to step out into that cliff, jump and say, I'm going to do this, you know. But fear is the work of the dark. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look what we've gone through as a society, or, you know, as a world, like with the fear of COVID and what that's done. To people and what you know, regardless of your feeling on what it all is and means, but it's definitely been interesting to see the way that's affected people psychologically.
And you know, it's like self-preservation. It goes right to the heart of being a human being. Survival. You know, survival mechanisms kick in, and when survival kicks in, you're not thinking rationally. You know, you're not thinking for yourself. You're afraid to go against groupthink.
Groupthink becomes way more attractive.
There's safety in numbers, you know. So,
and there's safety in division of like, oh, if they think differently, they're bad and we're good, and it's this bad good ego thing.
Well, the ego, the 3D world is up, down, left, right, black, white, good, bad. That's why nuance. I said earlier, like, are we going to have a moral conversation or are we going to have a spiritual conversation? Because it's not the same conversation. So if I'm going to have a vibrational conversation, how am I like my narcissistic ex-husband? Well, I'm shame-based. And I'm shame-based and I'm seeking approval and he's seeking control. So isn't it sort of like in the same soup?
Same soup.
You know, same soup. And if I'm angry that
different veggies in the same soup.
So when I think about it, that's what freed me. It's like, oh, when I see this on a vibrational level, like, oh, okay, so I'm angry he is who he is and he's angry that I am who I am, and I'm trying to control. I want him to be nicer to me and more loving to me, you know, because I'm doing all these amazing things for him, and he wants me to praise him just because he shows up, you know, and he wants me to praise him even though, you know, he's withholding and passive aggressive. And so, but isn't it all the same? I'm not coming from a place of empowerment and love of self. You know, so, you know, that's why when I pulled away from don't have these moral conversations, because that's 3D. That's going to keep you stuck. You know, have a vibrational conversation. You know, how are you similar to this person or dissimilar to this person? And it's so much easier to walk away from people too in love, because you're just like, it's okay. You don't like me.
Right.
It's okay. You're allowed to not like me.
Yeah.
You really are. You really are allowed to not like me, because there's something that, you know, we all need to, if I don't like something, you know, it might be something in me that I haven't yet.
Well, that's what they say.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's something unresolved in me. You know, I used to look at, you know, when I was a mom and I was taking care of the 3 kids and in my sweatpants all the time and baby puke on my shoulder, and I had every excuse in the book for not buying nice clothes or going to the gym. And so when I would see young moms drop the kids off and go to the gym, I was like, oh my God, you know, how selfish is that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, no, I resented people that were doing things that I couldn't do,
Right.
that I wasn't allowing myself to do, because my programming was, you're not enough to do that. You can't put yourself first. You can't drop the kids off and like go take care of yourself, because my mother infused me to think that was a selfish thing to do.
Yeah.
So what goes in comes out. And it wasn't until I noticed what I noticed in myself that I was able to say, that's effed up.
Yeah.
She's doing what she's supposed to be doing. She's going to be a better mom for taking care of herself.
Exactly. Of course.
But I had to notice what I noticed, which was difficult, because there's a little bit of like embarrassment of self. Like, how could you even think that? And then I realized it's not even my thought. It's a program.
Right.
It's a cable television show that's been playing in my head that I thought was my stuff, and it wasn't.
So changing that programming, you did the journaling technique.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you can offer people to how to change that programming? Because I listen to like, you know, listen to mantras or something at night, sometimes just trying to like get my subconscious to have good thoughts and stuff like that. What else do you think people should do for that?
I think understanding narcissism, you have to have a really good base understanding of what narcissism is, what codependency is, because unless you know what you're doing wrong, you can't fix it. Mm-hmm. So I needed to know. I started writing out, like, what is codependent behavior? How am I showing up codependent? You know, I remember baking like 200 cookies for my son's kindergarten class, and the teacher asked for like 30 or cupcakes. And the teacher asked for 30. It's my fault. She wanted 30. No, I had to bake 200, you know, because
People
I'm not
pleasing.
good enough.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to be able to feed the entire kindergarten.
Right.
And aren't I good enough because I did that?
Yeah.
You know, and feeling invalidated because I wasn't validated.
Because it wasn't, you weren't like extra rewarded for that.
But the thing is that was a mirror from my not enoughness.
Yeah.
So the 30 cupcakes wasn't enough.
It came from lack.
Correct. And when it showed up, I realized, Lisa, that was just a mirror for your own lack. And that's deeper, House of Mirrors. It's just a mirror for the lack of love that you felt in childhood. So everything was just an extension of some paradigm within. Yeah. And so again, until you're able to notice what you notice, and you notice your own House of Mirrors, you have to be able to take responsibility for what's being reflected back to you.
Right.
And thank you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. You know, the whole bit. I love you. Like, I love the reflection.
Yeah, I love you for giving me this opportunity to reflect.
Yeah, or it's just now that I see it, I can move beyond it. Mm-hmm. So it was me, like I said, once I understood what codependency was, and in the many ways I was seeking validation from a place of lack, I knew that I had to, you're enough, you're enough, you're enough. Stop having conversations just to have a conversation. Mm-hmm. You know, stop trying to make people feel good about themselves, right? That's not your job. Stop trying to fix people. Take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. Stop trying to manage that person's life. Manage your own life. Mm-hmm. Stop trying to rescue. Stop trying to enable. Let people stop taking care of grown-ass adults that can take care of themselves. Stop, you know? And that was hard, because when you're taught that you're not enough, your love is conditional. So you're constantly looking for ways to like be there for someone else, for a sense of self. And so I had to accept that I had no sense of self and try to give it to myself while I let go of all of these ego defense mechanisms. I had no safe ego boundaries. Right. So recognizing how codependency was showing up, making a detailed list, like accountability list, and the next day saying, don't do that. So go to work.
Self-parenting.
Go to work and shut up. Do your job and shut up. You know, stop trying to save people. Stop. It was literally just stop. A lot of self-control. But again, how do you stop doing something that is wrong if you haven't yet identified what's wrong?
Right.
So I think mantras are awesome. They help keep you calm and cool and help with rumination so that you can catch the behaviors or the comments. Like not going back to my ex-husband, with the text. That was me being non-codependent. You're entitled to you're entitled to your opinion of me.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to try to control it anymore. Oof. Yeah. My son quit. My son, the principal called me one day and he's like, "So your son cut school today, And I was just like, surrender. Mm-hmm. He's 14, 15 years old. I was like, okay, Mr. G, like, what's the consequence? And he just keeps going. And he knew he was supposed to be here. And I was like, Mr. G, what's the consequence? And he's like, what? And he's like, you're the only parent. I've called 10 parents. You're the only parent that asked me what's the consequence. Every other parent lied for their son. Oh, he was sick. Oh, I was like, that ain't me. That's not me. What's the consequence? Mm-hmm. He said 10 days detention. I said 10 days it is. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, I went home, I was like, Matt, so Mr. G said you cut school. He's like, well, they told me. I said, well, that's not what he said. He said that all the freshmen knew they were supposed to be there, even though the sophomores were being tested. So listen, dude, law of cause and effect. You did something you weren't supposed to do. The consequence is 10 days of detention. I wasn't going to fix it, try to be his friend, have a codependent relationship with my son. I was trying to teach him about boundaries and self-responsibility. So this is me like really pulling myself back, and like I said, you have to be aware of what codependency is and the sneaky, sneaky ways it shows up.
It really does. It is sneaky. Well, listen, I don't want to take all your time. This has been so incredible.
Yeah, it has been.
Yeah. I have some questions from some fans.
Cool.
Yeah, but did you want to ask a question while like dial these up?
When you mentioned anxiety and kids and early on, is it possible like whoever has these traits of being a narcissist, and it starts somewhere. There's like a ground zero or an event or can it happen, let's say, in kids where the parents don't display that behavior, like where it just manifests itself just when you said where pain triggers a good reaction? Like, are there early on signs in kids that parents should pay attention to? Because in every I have a 10-year-old and the school has its own psychologist, but I don't think the awareness for all these things is there. Yeah. And so what are some early signs that parents should say, okay, maybe if the kid has anxiety, maybe it's something else, maybe it's not?
Well, I think it's important if a child is experiencing anxiety, all of us want to fit in, especially children. Children want to fit in. It's a scary world out there. But I think having conversations about anxiety are very, very helpful. So children who feel like there's something wrong with them, and also teaching children that anxiety is normal, right? So like anytime that you start to do something that's new, your brain doesn't have a program for that new thing. So it has to literally create neural programs for the next thing. And that creates anxiety because the brain wants to keep you safe. So just explaining that to children sometimes, like the way that you're feeling is normal, I think is very, very helpful. But certainly kids who are experiencing normal, exploring why they might be anxious, like what is it about them? What's going on in their life that's new? What is it that they're anticipating? Teaching them about anticipatory anxiety. Like you're using your prefrontal lobe to anticipate something that hasn't happened yet. And your body is like a 2-year-old watching your mind, and it's responding to the thoughts that are in your mind, whether or not it's real or imagined or, just a consequence of a new experience. So I think that definitely recognizing anxiety early, having conversations around it is really, really important, and getting to the root of what's going on with the child rather than just ignoring it, because children have anxiety because they have anxiety. Right. And they're not being taught how to feel their feelings and process it, and learning that A, it's normal, B, what can I do about it? Meditation and journaling, maybe some counseling, and understanding they're not alone. So really normalizing this idea that, wow, you know, it's kind of normal to be an anxious 10-year-old, you know. I'm gonna have this anxiety once in a while, so I think that that's normal. But in terms of what are we looking for in children, certainly children who are bullying other children, who have a lack of empathy for other children, children who are stealing, you know, children who enjoy embarrassing other children. These are signs that, you know, it's not the end of the world. Lots of kids bully other kids. Lots of kids think it's normal, you know. So certainly trying to teach empathy. You know, like teach empathy. If empathy is experienced in the home where mom and dad, or dad and mom, whatever the situation is, if parents are modeling empathy for one another, then that children learn empathy for other children as well. It's very difficult to hurt someone when you know what love is, right? Because when you love yourself, you have forgiveness for the self, you have empathy for the self, and you don't want to hurt other people. So I think teaching empathy is very, very important. Modeling empathy, modeling respect. So children go to school and they know this is normal and that's not normal. So they're not jumping into that soup of, you know, peer pressure and hurting another child. I think that's important. But, you know, we really, and not overindulging a child. You know, that's another thing. Like you can teach entitlement. You know, that's why I wanted my son to suffer the consequences of cutting school. That's why if he did something that I thought was wrong, I was like, hey, dude, you know, got to pull that back. You know, my ex-husband was told that he was right even when he was wrong. And so there's no accountability. So it was like, you know, this family, they were right even when they were vicious. There was just lots of excusing of really poor behavior as long as they all stuck together, which teaches entitlement, which teaches a lack of empathy. As long as we're okay, no one else matters. So I think it's, I think every parent should understand a little bit about Erickson's stages of emotional development. I think that's crucial.
Erickson's stages of emotional development?
So important. Like you'll see yourself, you know, I coach, believe it or not, psychiatrists and psychologists.
I believe it. They don't know about MPD. It's crazy.
Yeah. You know, and the other
thing is... They probably know now, but they didn't. They were late on the game.
And you know what happens is you go into a lot of therapeutic situations and you're told, don't talk about your mother. We need to talk about you. You know, it's like, okay. And well, how do you know that your mother's a narcissist? What makes you think that? So now you're even being questioned. So we, you know, and with the age of the, you know, with YouTube and Instagram and Pinterest, people are developing the language to say, I've experienced this thing, you know, and so I think this is why I feel the way I feel. Can you help me deal with that? You know, I hear that a lot. And I have clients and people on Instagram and YouTube tell me all the time, my therapist told me about you. You know, my daughter's, one of her best friends is a psychologist, and they have a Facebook group, and she tells my daughter, she's like, we talk about your mom all the time. You know, and the experience of it and understanding it and validating victims of narcissistic abuse. We need to accept that victims of narcissistic abuse seek therapy and narcissists don't. So when someone's walking through the door and they're full of anxiety, or, you know, they're so desperate in their relationships and they can't trust their reality, we need to start asking, like, who are you living with?
Right.
What happened to you as a child? What have you been exposed to?
Right.
Or maybe you're just really, really highly sensitive. And how can we get you to refocus on the self and worry more about what you think and what you feel rather than what everybody else thinks and what everybody else feels?
Yeah. And seeing people who react in extreme ways rather than immediately judging the reaction, investigate a little bit about what caused that, what caused somebody to do something like that.
If you're a very codependent man and you meet a woman that has a lot of drama in her life, you might not know that that's trauma.
Right.
Right. So where there's drama, there's usually trauma. And you might want to fix it.
Right.
And if this person that you're dealing with is highly unaware, they can feel you could enable them.
Right.
And then you become the source of fixing them. And you're just in this negative, enabling, enmeshed relationship that requires someone to be sick and someone to be the fixer. Right. And so both people end up feeling very invisible to the other.
Yeah.
Rather than two people showing up empowered, like, this is who I am, and I see you in spite of your flaws, but I know that you're taking care of it. And here I am, and these are my flaws, but I'm taking care of it. And you know, let's just be two individual souls together. dealing with our own stuff and not making the other person responsible for how we feel or how to fix it.
That goes into this first question I got from Alexander the Free on Instagram, which is, if there's a situation where one person in a relationship has legitimate mental health issues and is having a negative effect on the other person as a result, but they love each other, what's the best way forward? An example would be PTSD, which can give the person close to them secondary PTSD. It's not their fault when they're triggered and act out, since part of the brain stops functioning properly. How do you protect yourself while supporting the person at the same time? I've always wondered how it works.
I think it's like
good question, right?
It's a great question. It's a great question. So we have to ask ourselves, why am I in this situation? Am I fixing this situation? Am I a martyr in this situation? Am I a support person in this situation?
Maybe there's a kid in the situation.
Could be, but you have to know, are your needs being met in this situation? Or are you in this situation because you're a supportive person? You know what I mean? There's a difference. So, when you get on the airplane, they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first. So in every situation you were dealing with someone who has severe PTSD, that person should be being treated for it. That person should definitely be on the road to recovery, because it's only going to get worse. When you're triggered, it's sort of like how I explain it to clients is like, imagine that you have a gangrenous toe, right? And you're in the mall and someone steps on your toe. You push that person away. That person didn't cause that pain, but you react in the moment because pain brings you right down to right here, right now. And it's survival. So you push against who's in front of you and you're not recognizing the pain is inside of you. So there should be, if someone who has PTSD should be, for the sake of the relationship, working on it. I think that's very important. If I was with someone who had PTSD, I'd want to know that they were working on it. If they weren't, and the relationship was fulfilling for both of us, other than that, I would work on having boundaries and understand that that's something that I'm not going to be able to fix in that person, and I wouldn't be under the impression that I could fix it. I could be supportive and not judge it, but know that it's not my job to fix it. You can't fix it. You didn't create this, and PTSD is usually CPTSD, which is complex PTSD. You were in a situation that you could not escape as a child, and you developed all of this, the anxiety responses and reactivity. So as long as you're taking care of yourself and you're not going down with the ship, you should not be developing PTSD as a result of someone else's PTSD. That's like drinking because your spouse drinks. You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. So boundaries are important.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a good answer. So I asked you a couple more? All right. This one comes from Lee Carrick Moore on Instagram. I love Lisa Romano. Can you please ask her, how do you know it's not you when the narc does such a number on you? You question your own sanity and recollection of events. There's a doubt there. I kind of know they plan it. It's part of the manipulation, but that's conscious. The doubt is more unconscious. So hard, my question. And please also thank her for her work.
That's very nice. Well,
very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing, so if you were swimming in a toxic pool, I think step number 1 is to jump out of the pool.
Right.
Right. So step number 1, I'm in a toxic pool. Let me remove myself from the toxic pool. So, when you're in a narcissistic relationship, the hardest part is that pulling yourself away from it. But I use this with my husband loves this. I tell him, when you're in a narcissistic relationship, you're like a chicken in the middle of a tornado. And when you're in the middle of the tornado, the chicken doesn't know, oh, this is a tornado. It's just chaos. It's just chaos. I don't feel right. I feel dizzy, right? Then the chicken gets kicked out of the tornado. Maybe they're 100 yards out and they go, oh, okay, I was in that.
That's what that thing was.
That's what that was. Now the chicken keeps running 200 yards. Oh, okay, wow. That's why I felt so crazy. Keep going, 300 yards, 400, 500 yards. Suddenly you're like, it wasn't me, it was the tornado, right? So you feel less crazy the more you distance yourself from the crazy tornado.
Yeah.
So step 1 is to remove yourself from this situation, right? And the less you're dealing with this toxicity, the more able you're going to be able to see things realistically, because you're not going to be triggered. Once you're in survival mode and you're a rational person, when someone's talking to you, you're processing it and you're thinking, is that true? Is that not true? But you're not realizing it is absolutely not true. It's manipulation. It's meant to confuse you. But in the moment, because you're triggered, you're not thinking rationally. You don't have rational thought. Yeah. So the first step is to remove yourself from the situation as much as possible, so that you can go, okay, that's what that is. That's what that is. And then I tell people, create a timeline, because if you understand narcissism, they are predictable. Yeah. There'll be love bombing, idealization. They'll start to discard you. Like I said earlier, I mentioned the last person I dated before I met my husband, and we were dating. He's like, did you get a nose job? And I was like, no. Oh. What?
Oh.
Have you ever thought about getting a nose job?
Oh my God.
I'm like, no. Now all of a sudden I'm wondering, like, what's up with my nose? And that's how it started. That's how it started. Like, are you sure? Right. You know, like, there's nothing wrong with getting a nose job.
Wow.
Just that little. So it was, you're awesome, you're so smart, blah, blah, blah. And then everything. So it was this little,
the devaluation.
Yeah, little by little. Then, commenting about, how I raised my kids, and what makes you think you're so right about the way you raise your kids? What makes me think I'm so right about the way that I raise my kids? Now I'm questioning. He doesn't think that I'm raising my kids. So the doubt.
But it's all designed to make you go, but wait, does that mean you think this? And then it's like, oh, so you're crazy. Like, oh no, that's not what I said.
Exactly.
Now you're like, it just all these setups for, you're
double
so sensitive. Yeah, the double bind.
Damned if you do and damned if you don't. You're not going to win, right?
Yeah,
you're not
and it
win.
Scrambles your brain. The effects it has on people, like, it's enormous. It'd be one thing if it was just a little bit of like, oh, it's disturbing, or a little drama, this, that. But no, it devastates lives. It devastates dreams. It takes you out as bad as any kind of addiction, anything. Yep. I mean,
you want to be close to people, and this, you have a natural innate need to want to bond with the person that was kind to you when you first met them, and you're thinking, okay, this has a possibility to grow. So you're looking for every possibility for it to grow, and then they hit you with these comments like, oh, you're so sensitive. That's not what I meant. Yeah. Why are you getting like that? Like, you totally made that up. You know that you just made that up, right?
Right. Gaslight.
Now I'm questioning, oh, maybe I did make it up. Like, and maybe it's not real.
And there is plausible deniability in all of it.
Yes.
That's key in a lot of this stuff, is there's always plausible deniability. Like, oh, that didn't mean that.
Yeah. I had a girl reach out to me on Instagram. And she says, Lisa, what should I do? She said, I just checked my boyfriend's phone, and I know that he's about to go meet another female in a hotel room. What should I do? And I'm thinking, leave?
Right.
So she's like, should I confront him? And I'm like, well, he's not going to admit it. And if he does, he's going to claim that she's a friend. You're too jealous. You're making things up. Or, it's your fault that I'm having an affair. So that's what's going to come out of a narcissist's mouth, because they don't take accountability. They need constant sources of narcissistic supply, so you're the primary source of narcissistic supply, and they need a secondary source of narcissistic supply. So I think first step, if you can, is to, and it's not always easy. You could have 3, 4, 5, 6 children and be financially dependent upon a narcissist, but acknowledging that this is sick. This is a tornado. You're the chicken in the tornado. You need to set a boundary and start studying this stuff. Study the narcissism so you can see the pattern, and then study codependency so you can see the patterns in you. That's the best thing you can do if you're stuck in a relationship. And stick at it, and eventually you'll have boundaries. And it gets really scary too. I have another woman who's in mediation with someone who's been abusive for 32 years. And, she writes me almost daily about how terrified she is to tell the truth in mediation and, go through with the divorce. She's terrified. It's all she's ever known, and he's convinced her that she's crazy. They're getting divorced because of her. And I'm trying to tell her that's okay. It doesn't matter what he comes out of his mouth. The goal is to end this, to become the chicken that's out of the tornado. Let him think whatever he wants, but he's blaming me. It's okay. Let it go.
Right.
Let it go. That's part of that 3D reality. Let it go.
Yeah. That's the matrix you just got to walk away from.
He wants you to swallow that pill so that you're upset. You know, He doesn't want you to date. He doesn't want you to move forward. He doesn't want you to be happy. He wants you to be crippled.
It is difficult for people in those situations with kids, though.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Trust me. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really tough. But it's the best thing that you can do for yourself and for them.
Right.
You know, because narcissism is literally a 3D paradigm that is unconscious and full of darkness.
Right.
You know, and fear is the thing. They get you afraid of what they think. They get you afraid of missing out on their first initial love bombing. They want you to be in an addictive state. They want you to crave it and be afraid of never having it. They want you to be afraid of abandonment. They want you to be afraid of the smear campaign. They want you to be afraid of dating. They want you to be afraid. So it's the 3D dysfunctional collective consciousness, you know, of man that's been really dysfunctional and misguided, you know, and seeing it for what it is an opportunity to get kicked out of it and create a new reality and a new earth, if you will.
I love that. So one more question. Is that okay?
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
one, and this is the last one.
Sure.
This one's from Mayor Wilcox on Instagram. I love that you'll be speaking with Lisa. I'm not sure if I have a specific question right now, but I would love for you and her to speak on where I am feeling myself right now in my journey. I'm finding it all easier now. I set my boundaries in 2015, doubled down on them in 2019, and now I'm just like, damn, I did this. I'm here, and I don't feel complacent or a shred of regret, the furthest thing from regret. But it is just an interesting feeling to have now, realizing that it's finally easier. The thing I'd been fighting for since 2010 finally is mine, and it's just a very big thing to feel, and I love to hear from you and Lisa about that.
That's beautiful. That's
right?
The whole thing. Like,
that's why I ended it with that.
You're enough, right?
Yeah.
And the battle is, please tell me that I'm enough from the 3D. Right? And enough people don't tell you that. Enough people don't validate you. And then you finally just go, there's so much pain in my body. I'm trying to get wine from a rock.
Right.
What if I just accepted that was a rock?
Right.
You know, and started to like just really focus on myself and set boundaries with people that were trying to hurt me or weren't of my vibe. And what if I just
were
focused
unconscious
on
and afraid and didn't know they were really doing what they were doing to some degree, maybe as well, sometimes.
Yeah, I don't think that my parents knew they were abusive.
Yeah.
You know, my father used to sing, "You was an ugly child. Who could your papa be? If I was your papa, I'd go jump in the sea."
Right.
He was afraid we would be conceited little kids.
Right.
You know, telling us you have no right to want that. You're selfish. You're this. He didn't want us to be seen as conceited little kids that other people picked on.
Right.
But he didn't. And he quit high school.
And it's different times too. Like people were so stupid, or ignorant, I should say, about psychological development and that kind of. It was nuts. It was just like, not that it's not nuts now, but
if you think about, like, there was no Dr. Phil.
Yeah.
There was no Oprah.
There was no Joe Dispenza.
Exactly.
There was no Lisa A. Romano.
Well, there really wasn't. You know, it was just survival. No. So my parents did the best that they could with what they had.
Yeah.
I do think that growing up with alcoholic parents corrupted the way they saw themselves in the world.
Yeah.
I don't think they realized, the codependent enmeshed relationship that they had is what my brother, my sister, and I ended up having. They didn't see that as a problem, and it's up to, and that's part of the problem, because when your parents don't see it's a problem, you mirror it.
Yeah.
And you want love, so it's the definition of insanity. Trying to do this thing over and over and over, seeking a different result. It doesn't work. Codependency doesn't work.
Yeah.
You never get satisfied when you're codependent and you're seeking validation outside of yourself. Never.
Right.
So the fact that this person is like, oh God, I set a boundary.
I know in her case it was like a mother kind of thing.
Oh boy, that's
heavy,
awesome.
Heavy deal.
Yeah, you when you have a mother who is narcissistic, let's say, or you're cutting yourself off from the mothership. And the person that's supposed to nourish you, you're saying, no, I know you can't. You have to grieve that. You're never going to have that relationship. You have to grieve it. And then you have to learn how to give yourself everything that this maternal figure was supposed to be able to give you, right? You have to give yourself something that you never experienced, that you deserved.
Yeah.
That's also wounded you. It's just heavy stuff.
It's real heavy.
It's really, but if you can come out the other side of it, you are unstoppable. Unstoppable.
That's true.
Because you're connecting with divinity.
You have to get through that.
Because you're not looking at to the 3D in the world. The Bible says, be in the world, not of the world.
Right.
You know, so it's like, oh, I can be in the world, know that I'm a 3D person, but also know that I'm divine, and seek my own guidance and connect with divinity and trust that instinct and know that I'm a part of everything, even though I'm not a part of the one thing that I wish I was a part of. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm more than what I think I am.
Yeah, fasting. I have a line in the song, like, I'm no longer who I was, no longer who I thought I was. But that just reminded me of that. But
Love
fasting puts that in puts the body in its proper place. It heals the body, but it also elevates the spirit over the body. Like, you're kind of like
overcoming hunger.
You're prioritizing spirit over the body, and it's just this, like, it really, like, when you combine that with like prayer, it's a really powerful tool.
Oh yeah.
You know?
I think that, you know, in terms of the mental health community, we can't keep ignoring that lots of us consider ourselves spirit too. So I think the mental health community has to start understanding spirit and vibration.
Right.
And the spiritual community has to understand the brain and the amygdala and fight or flight and survival and automatic default settings, the default mode network. And of course you have anxiety, and that's normal. And, you know, so that we can bring our bodies and our minds into a state of at least homeostasis where I'm not reacting to the way I feel, because I know the way I feel is normal based on my experiences. Now that I know that I'm normal, not judging myself, now maybe I can notice what I notice without recoiling from shame.
And like, also just like when you put both those worlds together, the ego and the spirit, it's like, okay, on the spirit level, your mom at the end with dementia, I love you so much, you know, that's the spirit that was always there.
Absolutely.
But the ego also needs to be reckoned with and acknowledged, and you had to protect yourself from the ego part. So like, if people can like really put those, and I think that's what I was initially confused about when I said with the Ho'oponopono, like, but wait, if in the spiritual realm I'm responsible for everything, how can I then call someone else a narc, you know, or something like that? But that does answer that question really well.
You're responsible for how you feel.
Right.
Not responsible for what was done to you. You're responsible for how you feel about a narcissist.
Right.
You're responsible for your level of consciousness regarding who a narcissist is. You're responsible for what your judgment of someone. You're responsible for your evolution of mind regarding, because I had to get to a point where I said my mother's ego was only trying to protect the little girl inside of her.
Right.
So, and she was unconscious. So that's the danger of living in an unconscious world with unconscious spirits, because everyone's reacting to their subconscious fears.
Right.
They just don't know it. And so once I see you and my husband and my children as wounded beings who are 95% unconscious most of the time, behavior makes sense. And there's a space of forgiveness that I can offer and grace, and then make a decision. There are times where I tell my kids, I can't talk to you today. They might be highly reactive, and I know that, they've been triggered. Cognitive bias, I'm wrong, I'm the devil, this isn't going to work, you know?
Right.
And I'm not going to seek their approval and reinforce this. Let me let things calm down and revisit this when they're calm. Not judge them.
Right.
You're ungrateful, you're this, you're crazy, and don't do that.
Right.
Because that's reactivity. So as long as I understand that everybody has an ego, that's a default, because all men are born asleep.
Yeah.
So we have to be able to be sim characters. We have to be able to be these Zelda characters. We have to be able to be these little Pac-Men, you know, in a world that moves fast. You have to be able to be on autopilot most of the time.
Keep your boundaries strong.
Consciously.
Yeah.
Consciously. From the conscious realm, do what you can to notice what you notice and mold it. Pluck out what's not good. Pluck out. That's what you're responsible for. How you feel about someone else is what you're responsible for. Like, what are you going to hold on to?
Right.
With my ex-husband, I have no anger towards him.
Mm-hmm.
I learned the most. He's one of the greatest teachers I've ever had in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because he refused to wake up, I was forced to wake up.
Yeah.
If he was just a little bit more awake, I might still be in the relationship.
Right.
But because he was so unawake, and so asleep, I was forced to I had to shift.
Yeah.
I had to shift.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Are you kidding?
This has
Thank
been
you.
a total thrill and just such an amazing conversation.
Yeah, I loved it.
Are you recording?
We hope so.
Because if that didn't get recorded.
And we got a Zelda reference too
There
in
you
the end,
go.
which was great.
I used to play that all the time with my son.
Me too.
Oh, he loved it.
How do people, do you only do seminars? Can people book you individually? Where do people find you?
Yeah, give all the social medias and all that.
Sure. You can find me at www.lisaaromano.com. But I would say, just plugging it because it works.
Go for it.
I have an on-demand program. It's called the 12-week Breakthrough Coaching Program. So someone who's struggling with being raised in a narcissistic family or a very codependent family, a family where there was addiction, alcoholism, you opt into this class. It's an online class. It goes for 12 weeks. If you take the on-demand version, you get a new lesson every week. You have a week to study the material, and then you get the next lesson, because when I was creating the program, I studied the science of learning, and I realized that you need a little bit of information every week for it to settle in, because too much is cognitive overload. You're not going to retain anything. And so I also wanted to help people change their brain through many different resources. So not just video, meditation, not just meditation, journaling prompts, not just journaling prompts, actual homework assignments. So it's the mind, body, the entire body is involved in this healing of this subconscious programming. And you can also, if you wanted to you could take a live class with me. So I also have a live version. I launch that twice a year. That comes with a live Facebook group and a live weekly live stream with me where you can ask me anything. And so
is there a wait list?
Not right now. It's opened, but there have been times in the past we actually had to close the class. So I've trained 5 different life coaches to do what I do. And they also help me with the live class, because some people, they don't want to do Facebook. I just want to do this in my own time, my own home. That's fine. And then there are people like, I want to be able to reach out to a life coach.
Community kind of thing.
Yeah, I want to be able to talk to Lisa or have a question answered. So there's that. And I continue to write books and create programs that I needed when I was waking up. Yeah. Because it's all about recognizing the codependency and the narcissism, the patterns, and then raising your level of consciousness so that you can notice what you notice. So in that space, change. And in that space, you become the creator of your own reality, because you're molding the now.
How do you stay vigilant with it when all your life is like evolved sort of beyond that to a degree as well?
I'm never going to forget what it felt like to be codependent and racked with anxiety and feeling so insufficient and so insignificant. And I just feel so much hope with the answer and the solution. There is a solution, and I'm just really, really excited. I know that I have to reach people where they are,
right,
to get them to where they have to go. So I see myself as, I see there's a bridge, and I'm on the bridge. So I have to keep one hand in the community of people, say, I know where you are. I know exactly how you feel. I've been there, and I've got some solutions that you might want to investigate. So I stay on the bridge, and I feed them this information so that they can cross the bridge, so they can become a ripple in the world, and the best thing in the world is when I get letters from children of moms who are like, my mom took your class, and it's just so different now.
Wow.
It's so different now. She doesn't have anxiety anymore. Her and my dad get along so much better. Or I had a man write me an email, and he's like, I got my wife back. She never understood how the relationship with her mom affected her. And she felt like I was like abandoning her when I wasn't.
Right.
And it wasn't until she dove into her childhood issues that she was able to see that, she was seeing abandonment in me, even though I wasn't abandoning her, so she's not abandoning herself anymore. So that mirror has been shattered,
Wow.
Because when you've been abandoned, you abandon yourself, and you see abandonment even when someone really isn't abandoning you in some cases. So the mirror shatters, and now she's taking care of herself. It's just, little by one person at a time, you change the world.
Yeah, well, you've changed many people's lives, so including mine.
Listen, all I do is hold the flashlight.
Yeah.
All I do is hold the flashlight. Everybody else, if your life has changed, it's because, you said, you're doing the meditations.
Because I wrote, I am enough on my mirror.
Amen. So did I.
Even though you told me to do it, I did it.
Listen, I had I am enough on my cereal boxes.
Yeah.
Ask my kids.
Yeah,
They're like,
I remember,
what are you doing?
Yeah.
I had notes everywhere. I'm like, you don't understand.
Yeah.
Mommy doesn't think she's good enough. Mommy has to be reminded that she's enough. Like, my kid's like, Mommy's crazy.
Well, you are definitely enough.
Well, so are you.
Far from crazy. I
Well,
love you very much.
Lisa.
Namaste.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thanks
you for
everybody.
gracing
my home.
Ehud,
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for inviting us.
Thanks for setting up,
It took
Ehud.
a long time to get here, but
Oh,
it was
man.
worth it.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thank
can't
you
wait
for
for
changing
part
the
2.
world. Amen. Good.
Yeah.
You're changing the world. You really are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Namaste.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, this is Joseph Arthur. Thanks for checking out Come to Where I'm From. Please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/come to where I'm from. We are an independent podcast, and any contributions you can make are greatly appreciated.